Now, Thursday certainly is shaping up to be an active weather day for us here at the Weather Network. I'm Jordan Reed, happy to be with you here on our live stream. Now, we do have tornado warnings currently in effect for Prescott and Russell region, and we are also tracking these storms with the potential for more rotation in eastern Ontario as well as southern Quebec. Now, Jacqueline Whittle, she is our meteorologist. She's also a storm chaser as well, so she is no stranger when it comes to active weather. She is joining us as well. But Jacqueline, I want to show you these videos behind me. Now, this is a tornado that has been confirmed in Barrhaven. Now, this is in south of Ottawa, and as you can see, these shingles are just being torn off of this building, and this has been sent in by Amon. Thank you so much for that. As we keep moving forward, you can see just even more damage just whirling through in the atmosphere, and of course we have a lot more to deal with as we continue on with our live stream as well. And just so everybody knows, we do have some updated information as well. We do have severe thunderstorms that are possibly producing a tornado, damaging winds, large hail, and locally intense rainfall are also possible. So this is a tornado warning for Ottawa, North, Canada, and Orleans, Jacqueline. So this is just in. I'd love for you to check out our radar so that we can give those people some more information.
Well, there you go. In fact, it's so fresh that my my program here, my software, hasn't even got the tornado warning on it yet. So this one just popped up. But yeah, it just happened. So that will be coming up momentarily, I'm sure. Where you see that magenta colored is the tornado warning, but that's not where this newest one is. So the newest one would be, well, second one in a row now for the Ottawa region, after already seeing, yes, that what will be confirmed by Environment Canada in due time, but we can confirm that, yes, a tornado did touch down, obviously based on the damage. But I assume it's got to be this cell here that is showing signs of rotation. So second tornado warning for that area for today. That's the one. I'll come back to that in just a second. That's one to note, Canada, Ottawa. But then we also have this one in this area near Van Cleek Hill and moving over to Lachute and Rigaud, Hawkesbury. This particular storm also showing a lot in the way of rotation. This one I have been watching very closely, and there's lots of rotation happening in this part of the cell. Not to mention heavy rain, you know, some strong wind gusts. Whenever you see, Jordan, these colors tightly packed together, the reds, the yellows, the greens, we can almost be certain that as this storm moves in this direction, we're going to be seeing some very strong wind gusts, on top of the fact that we are looking at a rotating storm. Whoops, my software is rotating there. There we go, like so. So we're going to watch that one very closely. That was the tornado warning that has been in effect earlier. And that would be, okay, so now I'm also looking here as I speak on my other radar here in my hands on my smartphone too. Yeah, so we're going to come back to that. There it goes. No, it hasn't come in yet. Yes, it has. Okay, there we go. Breaking news on live television, on live streaming platforms here. There's the tornado warning just popped in for Canada, Carp, almost to Arnprior, Stittsville. I hope I'm saying this right. Nepean, I hope. And then over to Ottawa North. So this is it. That's what we're looking at. If I take off the radar, let's see if I can take that off. Yeah, it's not going to work. Okay. Anyway, you can see that that is the magenta color underneath that storm cell. That's the one, Jordan, that is likely rotating. And of course, people, let's think about that, Jordan. I mean, it was just, what, a couple of hours ago that we were showing, maybe we've got that visual. Emmanuel, my director, do you have that visual of the tornado that we can roll? It was just a couple hours ago, Jordan, that we were seeing this kind of scene across the city of Ottawa. Not to mention, you know, the damage that's occurred. People are cleaning up. People are barely getting their wits about them after going through this already. And now another tornado warning right in the same area, Jordan.
Well, Jacqueline, I also have to report we do have another tornado warning in effect. So this is the Lachute area. So this has replaced the severe thunderstorm warning. We have upgraded that now to a tornado warning. Again, this is the Lachute area. So now we have a warning for northern Ottawa. We have one for Prescott and Russell, and now we have one for Lachute. So this is real-time weather. This is continuing to build, so it's good that we have you here with us, Jacqueline. But of course, for those in these areas, it's very important that you take these warnings seriously. So it's good to stay away from windows and glass doors. Make sure to go to a basement. If you don't have a basement, go to the lowest point in a building, and make sure you cover yourself as well with a mattress or sleeping bag to make sure that you are away from any debris that might happen. And make sure to continue to watch our live stream as well as our broadcast on the Weather Network. But Jacqueline, I'm wondering if you've seen anything in the radar in terms of the Lachute area. Are you seeing those rotations happening?
I sure am. I'm actually seeing it as we speak. So I'm looking at it on a different radar software program along with our own here. So this is Lachute. The storm is moving in this general direction. And yes, I'm seeing a couple areas of rotation on this storm, sort of one up in here and one in here. Got this kind of notchy look to the storm. So hard to say exactly what's happening, but I mean, let's face it, these storms have a history already of producing a tornado. We knew that the wind shear, Jordan, would be quite significant, and that is of course where we have our winds changing direction with height. So we've got two areas, as Jordan has mentioned, that we're watching, that we have tornado warnings for. So that includes the area of Lachute in Quebec. That is moving like so, about sort of east-northeast, I guess, kind of like in this direction. So Hawkesbury, you're in the clear, but areas like Saint Jerome, Saint Adele, all those areas are going to be expecting a pretty strong line of storms coming at you. Now, if you live in Lachute, right now is the time to get to shelter. Van Cleek Hill, those areas that the storm just rolled over you, it is now past you. Areas like Alexandria, all those areas. Cornwall, you've got a pretty strong storm over you or just past you now, but not tornado warned. The other area that of course Jordan has mentioned is just around the Ottawa area. Again, the second time we've seen a tornado warning for this area today after a confirmed tornado has touched down. Now, Jordan, of course, we've seen the damage. We could all take a guess at what the damage would be, but we never do that. We leave that to the assessment by Environment Canada, right? And the Northern Tornado Projects that work with Environment Canada very closely. They'll likely be out very soon to take a look at that initial tornado and see what the damage might be. But, you know, shingles blown off. What was really interesting, Jordan, and I know you saw it in the video, was the debris cloud. So what happens is the tornado is actually interacting with a home, the ground, and it's ripping off those shingles or the siding, and it's actually swirling that and lofting it into the air. That takes a pretty powerful tornado to do that. It'll be interesting to see what rating they come up with, but a very dangerous day across the nation's capital.
You're right, Jacqueline, and that's just one part. That's just one part of southern Quebec that we have seen that damage in Barrhaven. We've seen the shinglings just flying through the air. We've also seen those windows that have been completely shattered by these strong winds, by these tornadoes, and of course, we still have tornado warnings in effect. So again, this is for north of Ottawa, Canada region, Prescott, and Russell as well. You are in the tornado warning category, and of course, there are still watches as well for Kingston, Montreal, but those who are east, that is where you see more of the impact of the storm. So we are still looking as well for those damaging wind gusts, large hail, heavy rain, and I guess those rotations again with those storms. So Jacqueline, when we do have those tornado warnings in effect, it is important to go to shelter, but you are a storm chaser yourself, so you have been in the midst of these storms. What are the top things that you think of when you are on the ground covering an event like this?
Well, a lot of things come to mind, Jordan. I mean, for example, you know, you talk about being in a safe spot. I have actually witnessed, true story, someone that took shelter in Moore, Oklahoma, and they were in their center point of their home in their bathroom, and she was holding on to her child's hand, and the tornado ripped the entire home away, and the person was lofted vertically in the air, holding that person's hand, holding the child's hand, and they were holding onto the piping in their bathroom. So the, you know, all of that copper wiring and piping, and that's actually what saved their lives. So I've seen firsthand, I've talked to people firsthand about how going to those safe spots, if you have a basement, even better. I mean, you know, you want to make sure that you're in a safe spot. You do not want to be out there. I know it's so tempting as a storm chaser. You want to get the smartphone out, you want to get the video, and you want to get it out and have it go, quote, viral. It's not worth your life, ever. People that are out storm chasing, Jordan, they know how to interpret radar. Not to say that they can't make errors too, but usually they're professionals or meteorologists, and you want to make sure you're away from the storm, getting a view of the storm. If a storm is rolling over top of me in my home, I'm not out there with a smartphone. If it's coming at me, I'm in my basement, even as a storm chaser. So yeah, I mean, it really depends on kind of what you're doing. But yeah, these ones are certainly not to be taken lightly. I really can't fathom that we're actually talking about a second tornado warning for Ottawa in the same 2 to 3 hour period. This does not happen all that often. You know, someone asked that on social media. Is this the new norm? We can never link these one-off severe weather cases to climate change. But we are seeing a lot more in the way of extreme weather events. I don't think there's a question there with everything that we've seen this spring and summer, be it fires in Nova Scotia, fires in Quebec, you know, heat, all kinds of things. But no, we can't really link each individual setup like this to climate change. But yeah, I mean, we've had 2 warnings in one day for Ottawa. Let's take you to the video and show you what we've been seeing. We've got some incredible video here at the Weather Network. That's what I'm talking about, Jordan. Do you see that debris actually lofted in the air? In fact, sometimes radar will actually pick up on some of that debris, and you'll see these returns coming back to the radar because you're seeing shingles or chunks of roof or whatever. You know, my heart goes out to anybody that's been impacted by this tornado today. I hope that everybody heard the warnings, and I hope that everybody got to a safe spot. I did hear of 1 injury so far. Is that kind of what you've heard too, Jordan?
So far, yes, and we're continuing to update that as well. We have a whole team here who is researching all real time as we are broadcasting the weather updates as they come in. But you're right, Jacqueline, as I see those shingles just flying through the air, you think about the tornado effects, but you also think about the people, you think about the animals, you think about, of course, the property as well. And we have already seen that damage in Barrhaven. As we mentioned, we've seen those windows that are shattered. And of course, there's going to be a whole cleanup crew. There's going to be an aftermath long after the storm ends as well. And our very own Mark Robinson as well, I believe he is heading towards the Ottawa region to get a closer look at this. But as you said, Jacqueline, it's important that we do keep these adventures to the professionals and make sure that they're the ones on the ground, because they know how to handle a storm like this, Jacqueline. And as we mentioned, it's important to take shelter. It's important to have safety top of mind. But I do have some questions in terms of timings of these systems, Jacqueline. I know that there are currently alerts in place, but for the other regions that are in watches, for example, like Montreal and Kingston, what is it looking like for them? What can they maybe anticipate in the growing hours to come? Because I know we're speaking about rotating storms in the evening hours. So we're talking about the commute, the ride home, as well as in the dinner hours. So these are times when people are wanting to be out on the roadways. They're wanting to go home, but maybe this is a time to stay at work.
Yeah, it's very good advice. Of course, nocturnal thunderstorms, probably the most dangerous that we can see. And last night, of course, I was watching those storms across the Michigan border as they were coming across the Windsor-Detroit area, and again, after dark, right? So we do still have quite a bit in the way of daylight yet, and these storms are kind of knocking on Montreal, Metro Montreal's doorstep, or the door, I guess. So it's going to be there sooner than later, at least this first batch. So there's a couple lines of storms right now, Jordan. There's this one here, and this is the one that is currently tornado warned by Lachute up here. This is moving in this direction, so Montreal is going to be seeing these storms rather soon. I would guess probably within the hour. Then we've got this storm, this line of storms along the cold front. And it, you know, let's just zoom that out. I mean, you can see this is a very clearly defined line all the way into upstate New York, working its way, and plenty of severe thunderstorm warnings stateside as well. This one is the one that is triggering the tornado warning in the Ottawa region at the top end of this storm. But to go back to answer your question for areas like Kingston, most of that's done for you now, Kingston. This cold front is now to your east, which is good. So there's kind of where the front would be. But areas like, you know, Cornwall and Eastern Ontario and over to Montreal, over to the eastern townships, that brown color that you're seeing there, that is a look at the tornado watches that are in effect. So remember, tornado watch is something that gets issued usually ahead of the event. It means that conditions are favorable for tornadic storms. We know that the environment is conducive to a tornado potentially forming. When you see the magenta colored tornado warning, whole different ballgame. Now it's not oh, we think this is going to happen, it is likely happening. So that means we're seeing rotation on radar. That could be we're seeing some ground verification from people in the field that are seeing rotation, or a funnel cloud, or maybe a tornado. So when you see the magenta color, that's when you want to get to shelter. But to go back to that question, it's a good question. Montreal, storms are knocking on your door. They're on the way. We've got an abundance of storm energy in this area, in the eastern townships, into the evening hours, Jordan. We also have an abundance of wind shear. So that means, just a quick little, so if I'm over here, if we've got winds coming out of the southeast, say at the surface, and then you've got winds a little bit higher up in the atmosphere, maybe coming from this direction, and then maybe up in the upper levels of the atmosphere, you have them coming from that direction. That is how you can get rotation to form in a storm. And we are seeing that. You don't have to believe me, just look at the evidence out on social media. In fact, let's show you the evidence. Let's take you to that storm. Emmanuel, if we could just roll that video of that impressive tornado that rolled through the nation's capital today. Do we have that video? There it is. Thank you, Manuel. So just to give you an idea, this happened 17 kilometers southwest of Ottawa. This is a suburb, and Barhaven is what it's called. There's about 100,000 people that live in this particular region. Wow. When I saw this unfolding on social media, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that debris. I almost had to do a double take, because that's not something that you always see with a tornado. And usually, Jordan, we would wait till Environment Canada gives us the official rating, whether it's an EF1, 2, 3, whatever it is, and then we would say confirmed tornado. But obviously, looking at that video, we know it's a tornado. It's lofting debris, and never something that you like to see.
No, absolutely not. Of course you don't want to see it, and this is why you do have to take shelter immediately when we do see these tornado warnings. And of course, we can confirm that that was a tornado. We do have, of course, Jacqueline Whittle, a meteorologist here, who can see it, but we do have the Northern Tornadoes Project, who will likely be out with Environment Canada after the fact to do a diagnostic of the damage. But as we mentioned, we do have some weather activity impacting some of the more populated traveling times. So we're talking your evening commute for those in the Ottawa region. So it is very important, if you are out on the roadways, to keep these things in mind. So this is tips for driving in a tornado. Of course, we do not want this to happen, but it's important to keep this top of mind with the active weather we have throughout our Thursday. So these are the do's. Go to the nearest solid shelter. So if you are on the roadways, if you do notice that the weather is getting bad, take cover to the nearest shelter that you can find. Drive at a 90-degree angle away from the tornado's path, whether you're heading home or not. Get out of the way. Find lower level if no shelter is nearby, and exactly, put your seatbelt on, lower head, and take cover with hands if you cannot find shelter nearby. Now, Jacqueline, you did mention something that I would love to talk about. You mentioned shear in particular, and for people who may not know, what are the perfect ingredients, the weather elements that help to fuel a system like this that is causing these tornadoes, these rotations, these watches, these warnings in the southern Quebec region?
Yeah, it's not like every severe thunderstorm day has wind shear. It's not like every severe thunderstorm event will produce hail. We've got kind of all the ingredients right now in the atmosphere to come together. And the main question that we need heat, we need moisture, we need wind shear. So when we talk about wind shear, it's really thinking about basically, like when you think about an ice skater and they have their arms out, if they had their arms stretched out and they were doing spins, they can go a certain speed. But if they bring those arms in, you ever see the ice skater bring their arms in, and they can really spin a lot faster. That's right. So it's kind of how the atmosphere works too. So if we get a thunderstorm and it has enough wind shear where those winds are changing direction with height, we can start to get the entire base of the thunderstorm to rotate. But if we think now about the ice skater, if that spin can tighten up, that's how that mesocyclone can go from a broad rotation on a full thunderstorm to a tightened up rotation to potentially a funnel. And then obviously if it touches the surface and makes contact with the ground, then it's deemed a tornado. But what's interesting to me, and I always think about this, and I think it was Mark Robinson who came up with this analogy, but we were doing a talk one time, and I was in a dress and I'm wearing a high heel. And he said, you know, Jack, it's kind of like your whole body is the size of the thunderstorm, but my high heel would be a representation of what the actual tornado would be. And that's because it is such a small feature when you think of a 50, 60,000 foot thunderstorm in the atmosphere. So it's kind of incredible how they operate, and a tornado is not something that always happens, but wind shear is the one differentiating ingredient, Jordan, that you need for tornadic events.
Okay, thank you so much. That helps a lot. Let's just remind the audience again of some of our tornado warnings in the region. So again, we have a tornado warning for Ottawa North, Canada, Lachute area. We also have one for Prescott and Russell as well. So these are current alerts happening, which means take shelter immediately if you are in these regions. Find a lower basement, find lower ground, go to a bathroom and take cover. Now, Jacqueline, we're talking about these tornado warnings, and as we're heading east, it seems like they are next in the line of fire. You said Montreal is currently in a tornado watch, not yet in a warning, but I'd love to know, how is the system right now? Where is it and where is it headed?
Okay, so really good questions, Jordan. I want to show you, we actually had a request on our YouTube account or on our stream somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where it came through, but someone said, I wish the Weather Network would show velocity data. So let's get into some velocity data and nerd out here, and also keep you safe. So velocity data is basically showing winds that are inbound and outbound. So coming toward the radar and going away from the radar. Whenever you see them kind of intersect or cross, that's an indication that something is rotating. So you've got winds that are kind of doing this. So you can clearly see, you don't have to be a meteorologist to see these bright greens and bright reds. Whenever they are more, let me just get my pen here. Whenever they're more, is this going to work for me? I think it is, yes. Whenever they're more pronounced, like brighter greens and brighter reds, that's where we know that the rotation is intensifying. And you can see as this storm was moving by Van Cleek Hill, we have some signs of rotation, both the bright reds and the bright greens. Toward is the green, and away from the radar is in the red. Check it out at 2:30 p.m., so a little while ago, there's some hints of some rotation there. So these are the kinds of things that we're watching. If I go right to the current, the current radar, there we go, in Lachute, we are seeing the potential for a bit of rotation, but it's weaker than what we saw earlier, Jordan. So that's what we look at, and you can even see some hints of rotation near Rigaud. So now let's go back to the reflectivity, or what basically determines our rain rates, how heavy the rain is, how large the hail is in many cases. And you can see, it looks like that tornado warning, by the way, has dropped for Canada and Ottawa, which is good news. So you're in the clear there. But if we go over to the area that I showed you, those areas of rotation, well, it's no wonder that those tornado warnings in magenta were issued for areas like Van Cleek Hill the past hour or so. However, they've been lifted. But here's our current tornado warning. If I just pause that for you there, yes, that's going to work. And I'm just going to turn off the radar for a second. Okay, there we go. Where that pink is, Saint-Jérôme, Blainville, Mirabel, Lachute, Hawkesbury are on the other side there, but that is the area that we're watching for the potential of rotation currently. And I showed you, and I'm going to go back to it in a second. So we know that Lachute, we know that area is all under tornado warning. Well, let's go back to the velocity and show you that, and it should probably correspond with some, rotation on radar. And it indeed is, and that's why Environment Canada is watching that closely. A reminder to all our viewers, by the way, we don't issue the tornado warnings, watches, none of it. Environment Canada does, and we communicate it to you. And they also do the assessments. So for the Barrhaven tornado, we will communicate what that assessment is in terms of the damage. Rotation is fairly broad right now on this, which is, at least it is by my radar here. But if anyone has any updates here, I'm just looking, question from YouTube, any storms for Cobourg? Jordan, I'll quickly answer this question. I'm going to throw it back to you. Let's go back to analysis mode here. All right, we'll clear that out. So Cobourg, all right, so yeah, I mean, basically, we're looking at basically that line of storms sort of east of Gananoque, east of Kingston, Cornwall, those areas, you've got a few residual storms, and then over to Saint-Jérôme, and then obviously Montreal will be next in line. So that's a look at the radar. Hopefully that's answering your question, and I'm doing a million things here. So
of course, people want to know, right, Jacqueline?
Tornado. Yeah, exactly. Grenville East, Ontario. They are in the clear now, okay? How bad is it going to be once it gets to Montreal? Okay, so it's, yeah, I mean, the best advice we can give you for that question is be severe weather prepared, right? Be ready. Make sure you have a plan. Like you said, Jordan, probably not the best time to be getting in the car and going for a joyride when we know that there's a line of storms right here moving in this general direction toward the Metro Montreal area. You know, just stay put until this passes. It's not going to take long, probably the next couple hours. We'll get some clearing. Now, that I say that, but there is a second line of storms that's also moving in this general direction. But my anticipation is that this should probably weaken out by the time it gets there. And the reason why is because we've had this line of storms move over this area. It's kind of overworked our atmosphere. I could be wrong on that, but whenever we've had a heavy rain or a pool of cold air coming out of a thunderstorm, it usually kind of messes up the air mass, so the instability is kind of weakened. But again, I could be wrong on that. We're going to be with you every step of the way. We'll watch the radar. Of course, Mark Robinson is making his way to Barrhaven to have a first look, and I have covered many damaged paths with Mark Robinson, and he is the one that you want there telling that story. He knows how to be safe. One of the things you got to be very careful of when you go into these damaged paths is, you know, power lines that are down, gas leaks, these kinds of things, and making sure that you're a help and not a hindrance. You don't want to be in anyone's way. We're here to tell the story, but we want to make sure you're safe, and our heart goes out to anybody that had any impacts from that tornado in Ottawa today.
Absolutely. So let's take a little bit of a look, because we've seen all this color here, but there's nothing that shows such a big impact as this video that you will see right now. So take a look at this. Again, this is in Barrhaven, just South Ottawa, and you can just see this shingles being torn off the roofs in this suburb. Now, of course, we also have seen some windows that have been shattered, and this looks like the end of the tornado as well. Jacqueline, you told me this is called a rope tornado, but I do want to mention to you, Jacqueline, that we do have some good news. We do have a tornado warning ending for the area of Prescott and Russell as well. So obviously that's great news. Can you tell that that has ended in terms of the radar? Are you seeing a little bit of a difference when it comes to the colors?
Well, yes, it has been lifted in terms of the colors, but also the storm is weakening out, which is good. So there's not a whole lot in the way of rotation. There's actually 2 storm cells right by Ottawa. Let me pause this. And this one was warned, and now this one's also weakened out. So that's good news. So still a strong storm. You still might be getting hail. You get some heavy downpours, potential for some strong wind gusts. But the stronger line of storms is definitely over here, and this is where we're really watching for that tornadic threat. Oh, and it looks like a new tornado warning may have just been issued. I think it has. Yes. So Soulange area, Vaudreuil, I hope I'm saying that right, Valleyfield, Huntingdon. Yeah, so that area now you can see on my map, and I'm sure you have the paperwork with you there to talk to that warning, do you, Jordan?
Absolutely, you nailed it on the head. We have Soulange area. Again, sorry for the pronunciation. We also have Vaudreuil area, Valleyfield, Huntingdon area as well. So this has just been picked up by Environment Canada as of 3:13 on Thursday. So these are new tornado warnings that have just been put into effect. So what does that mean for the audience members? That means you need to stay away from windows and glass doors. Go to a basement or the lowest point in the building. Take cover with a mattress or sleeping bag. And of course, make sure to check in with the Weather Network for your latest details. Now, of course, we have had tornado warnings popping in. We've had them ending as well. Jacqueline, this has spanned over the course of just a couple of hours for southern Quebec, and we are still watching rotation as it makes its way east towards the Montreal region as well. So even though these endings are potentially ending for places like Prescott and Russell, they're still dealing with those heavy, impactful winds. So it doesn't mean you're completely out of the clear when it comes to the weather possibilities, but it does mean you're out of the tornado warning. But I do want to know, for these places that were just issued their tornado warnings, what are you seeing on the radar in terms of that rotation, those wind gusts?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna show you exactly what I'm showing, what I'm seeing rather, Jordan. Let's go to this warning though, because I've got a bit more of a zoomed in look. So there you go, Saint Jerome down to Huntingdon, I hope I'm saying that right, Vaudreuil, Valleyfield, Soulanges area, tornado warning in effect for those areas right south of the St. Lawrence. So if you live in this area, now is the time to get to shelter, okay? No messing around. If you've seen the video, today. We're going to show you that. We have it on standby, but let me just go to the radar first. If you have seen the videos of this tornado that happened in Ottawa today, nothing to mess around with. This is a very serious situation. You know, roof shingles, siding being torn off, debris cloud. It had all the classic looks to a tornado. There it is. I mean, this is like something that I've seen in the U.S., you know, and this happened about 2 to 3 hours ago in and around the area, the southwestern suburbs of Ottawa, in Barrhaven. It's about 17 kilometers away from Ottawa proper. And you can see, and when you look at that tornado, it kind of looks, wow, look at that debris. That's just unbelievable. When you look at that tornado, it's not like that perfectly defined tornado, but that doesn't always happen because that's a condensation cloud. And sometimes the condensation, the moisture doesn't actually connect right to the base of the cloud and the ground, so you don't actually see it, but it's still, the winds are still circulating, so it's still a tornado and it's in contact with the surface. And like for this, you might look at that and go, oh, that's a funnel cloud. Well, we can't see beyond that house. We know now because of the debris cloud that, yeah, that was likely putting down a tornado at that time, but never assume something is just a funnel cloud because you might be looking at a tornado, and it, in this case, very much looks like it's coming at this person's house. But let's go to the radar because that was, of course, earlier today. That was near Ottawa, just 17 kilometers southwest of Ottawa in Barrhaven, where Mark Robinson is actually headed to now to get a look at the damage, and we will bring you the latest as soon as he does. But here's the latest line of storms, the ones that are tornado warned by Environment Canada. Reminder, we do not issue these tornado warnings. Environment Canada does. We are here to communicate them to you. And I'm going to get to the velocity data to show you the rotation in the storms. But this is there's several areas of rotation the last check I had. So Saint Jerome, Mirabel, all those areas up there. At the very least, you're looking at very strong wind gusts out ahead of the line. But we are seeing some signs of rotation. Couple areas of rotation. There's kind of a notchy look to the storm. That's usually an indication of winds coming like this, like a inflow winds being sucked up into the updraft of the storm. Hard to say, but I'm going to go back to the velocity data. Now, for all those weather weenies out there, velocity is basically showing inbound and outbound winds to the radar, and that's how we determine rotation in a storm. So that's the radar scan for the last couple of hours, well, about the last hour and a half, I guess. Now I'm going to pause it to our most recent scan, and there you go. You can clearly see the rotation here with that and that. That is saying inbound, or winds coming toward the radar and winds going away from the radar. So there's some rotation for sure in that area. So if you live in Saint Jerome and Blainville, this line of storms is all moving in this direction. So you want to get to shelter. And where's the best place for shelter? Jordan, of course, we talk about this quite regularly. It's not going to be on your front porch with your smartphone. As cool as it is to see, right? I know we all want to do that, but no, the best place is to get to the centermost point in your home, or if you have a basement, and many do in this area, just get underground, go to the basement, take the kids, take the dog, wait it out, it'll be gone before you know it.
Absolutely. And again, let's just remind the audience, we have seen a tornado touchdown in Barrhaven. There are currently tornado warnings for Voidadoy. We also have Soulanges, we have Valleyfield, Huntingdon, and Lachute area. But of course, we've been talking a lot about tornadoes, but let's learn a little bit about some myths that are associated with them.
Are you safe from a tornado if you live in a city or by a lake? Do tornadoes truly not hit the same place twice?
Plenty of tornado myths surface every season. Here are 5 you should never believe. Number 5, a big city will protect you. While big cities can alter thunderstorm movement, they cannot always repel a strong tornado maker. Dozens of tornadoes have hit major cities such as Ottawa, Vancouver, New York, and even Washington, D.C.
Take shelter in the southwest corner of your basement. It was believed that this corner would allow us to avoid wind-blown debris, but the problem is, since the wind is not blowing in a straight line, it is impossible to predict the safest corner. It's best to shelter in a windowless room, like a closet, bathroom, or basement.
Number 3, an open window will equalize the pressure. This myth claims that by opening a window, you avoid a pressure bomb that can demolish the house. However, it's not the pressure that destroys the house, it's the wind.
By opening a window, the air from the tornado will enter like a whirlwind and will cause the most destruction.
Number 2, an underpass is a safe shelter. Although it seems logical, sheltering here can put you in more danger and could turn deadly. This acts as a wind tunnel. The wind gusts accelerate through the narrow space. If you see a tornado, stay in your car or get to a ditch for better shelter. Finally, the most popular belief, number 1, tornadoes can't strike the same place twice.
Don't trust this old saying. Tornadoes have no regard for the past and can form in the same place over and over again. For example, Barrie, Ontario was affected by 2 major tornadoes, the first in 1985 and the second most recently in July 2021.
All right, thank you so much. Of course, we've been talking about tornadoes, we've heard about the mist, but there's also effects that impact a huge population. We're talking 500,000 people in Quebec that are currently without power because of how strong this storm has been, the rotation as well. So Jacqueline, 500,000 people without power currently. That is a big population. So we're talking about storms that are impacting a huge population. We're talking about Ottawa. So what should people know right now in terms of where the storm is headed?
Well, there's a line of storms, several of which, several areas are tornado warned. As you mentioned, you're looking at those warnings right now, but this is a cluster of thunderstorms, many of which are showing signs of rotation. I just want to show this to kind of remind everybody, what the power of a tornado can do. Now, whether it's an EF1, EF4, EF5, doesn't matter. Look at that piece of lumber that is shot right through the siding of that home on the left side of your screen. That is a reminder that it's not so much how fast the winds are going. Again, I'm going to quote Mark Robinson because I spend a lot of time chasing storms with him. But truly, it's not how fast the winds are going, it's what the winds are blowing at you. And if you have a projectile like a 2x4 or whatever this is, 2x6, whatever it is, coming out, out of a tornado and smashing through your windshield if you're out on the roads, that could end in a fatal manner, right? So it's all the debris that's being lofted in the air. And look at the front yard of that person's home. I mean, the siding's ripped off, the windows, the glass, all the shingles on the front driveway. I mean, so we'll get the official damage assessment from Environment Canada, and we'll bring that to you. But meanwhile, we have several tornado warnings from Saint Jerome all the way down to Huntington. And I did have a couple questions here on YouTube. So how soon will it be hitting us in Saint Jerome and Blainville? So I'm going to go to the radar, Jordan, and show them right now. So there's Saint Jerome. It's possible that this storm is actually over top of you as I speak, or at the very least just close to you, but it's about to roll right over Saint Jerome and Blainville any minute now for you. Mirabel, looks like you're probably experiencing some very heavy rain at this time and likely some very strong wind gusts. But this is the area, if I take off that radar for a second, this is the area that's under the tornado warning. So this whole magenta color and all the way down to the south as well. So if you live in Saint Jerome, get to shelter because that storm is now past areas like Lachute, over top of Mirabel, and headed for Saint Jerome and Blainville literally any minute. So let's go back to the radar. We'll show you the position. This particular view of radar, Jordan, doesn't really show rotation that well, but I can show you the velocity data. And just before I do that, though, a couple other things to talk about. So you can see all these storms that are south of the border, Malone down through here. This is all, let's see here. Yeah, that's south of the border. And I'm just trouble here. Did my radar, oh no, it didn't freeze, it just froze on my end. Bear with me here, having a bit of a technical, there we go. So yeah, we got to watch for that line of storms is basically what I'm getting at, because it extends all the way down into upstate New York. So, you know, this is the front probably back here, and then this is the likely the warm front that extends way up there. The greatest area usually for tornadoes is what we call the triple point at an area of low pressure, and that's where the winds experience, there's kind of, this is very quick, this is not exact science, but generally where the most rotation would occur, where the tornado potential would be. So it's interesting as that low passed through the Ottawa region that we were pretty close to that triple point of the storm. By the way, if you're watching us from Ottawa, no tornado warnings in effect for you, but as we know, Saint Jerome over to the east here into the eastern townships, which, by the way, Jordan, this is my last thing, and then I'm going to throw it over to you. We talked about something called helicity. And that's basically the potential for rotation in storms. And this is model driven. So we look for the parameters ahead of an event to say, okay, where is the greatest area that we could see rotation? Well, look at where the helicity is. I mean, like went right through the Ottawa region. These little sort of teal colored blobs is an indication where the helicity was strong. Well, it's going pretty well exactly. Look at that, right through Saint Jerome, right where we have a tornado warning exactly happening right now. That's where the greatest helicity is currently, and that's why we're seeing those rotating storms. So some interesting stuff. We'll send it back to you, Jordan, with some updates in the newsroom.
Of course, Jacqueline, thank you so much. And we are talking about these storms in some of the most populated times of travel as well. So currently happening, and of course, as it moves east, we're talking the evening commute as well. So these are times where we do not really want you to be on the roadways. But Emmanuel, if you can just take this map behind me, just full screen for the full audience, because I want you all to see these numbers as clearly as you can. So as you can see on the outskirts of these numbers, we have single digits. Now this is Hydro-Quebec, so this displays all the power outages across the province. And as you can see, as you dial in here, it is 432, 33, 32. These are all the people who are without power, and that big number for across the entire province is 500,000. So 500,000 people are without power as we speak across Ottawa. So this is definitely a time where you want to take shelter if you are in those tornado warning areas. But Emmanuel, if you want to bring up some of the footage that we have sent in from some of our viewers as well. We did have a tornado touch down in south of Ottawa. So let's just take a look at this. And as you can see, just the reactions from people as they watch this tornado rip the shingles off of homes. You can see that debris just circulating in the sky, and that is very dangerous. Not just the tornado, but the debris as well. And of course, Jacqueline, what really surprises me about watching all this footage is that how quickly the damage is done. And of course, we're going to have Mark Robinson. He is en route to this location as well, because he wants to talk to people on the ground, of course, after things calm down, because he wants to hear about the communities. What is really great, Jacqueline, you can speak to this, of course, because you are a storm chaser, but when we do have these events, a lot of the times the communities really band together to try and fix the situations. They are out on the ground, they are taking trees from roads, they're helping their neighbors who may also still be without power. So it really does show the unity that we will likely see from Mark Robinson's report that is soon to come.
Well said. You're right. That's exactly how it is. I've seen it time and time and again. Some of the best, right, comes out of some of these worst situations. And you're right. It's amazing how quickly the cleanup can start to happen. I saw that hydro crews were going and knocking on people's doors earlier and making sure that everything was safe and, there weren't any hydro threats. So a lot of times you can get power lines that are live and on the ground, and then you get pooling water from a thunderstorm, and there's maybe stray dogs or cats or something that have been disrupted, and they're walking around and people are walking around, so it can be a very dangerous situation, especially right when it happens. But I have a feeling that yes, the community in and around Barrhaven are probably doing a great job already helping each other out. That's what good Canadians do, right? Let's go to the radar, and again, our heart breaks for anybody that was impacted by this tornado, because it's never a nice thing to have it happen in your own backyard, and unfortunately people are dealing with that currently. I had a question on YouTube. Basically, okay, so now we have a severe thunderstorm warning for Huntington, so that tornado warning has dropped for that area. That's good news. And I also had a question about Montreal and when will it be arriving in Montreal? Very, very soon. In fact, it's already in the western parts of the city. You can see there's the rain. I'm just going to pause that. So if you live in Montreal, this is the time to get inside, not to take the dog for a walk, not to drive home if you're at work. It's the time to just stay safe until this passes, because currently Metro Montreal is not under a tornado warning, but areas around it are. If I go to, let's go pause this and I'll get rid of that. You can see where the current tornado warnings are. There we go. So yeah, we've got basically everywhere west of Montreal right now is under not just a severe thunderstorm warning, folks, but a tornado warning. So Saint-Jérôme, Mirabel, Rigaud, Salaberry de Valleyfield, Howick. I'm hoping I'm saying all this right. But you can see earlier we had Huntington. That was under a tornado warning, in Ormstown, some of these areas in the eastern townships. That has since been lifted. But all of this is moving toward Metro Montreal, toward Laval. If you live in this area, please just stay safe. It's not worth it. We have seen a tornado already doing damage today in the Ottawa area. So long way to get through still in the evening hours. There's some of the damage. Check that out. It's, trees snapped. You can see actually on that one. I wonder if I can just see if I can zoom in this here really quickly. I don't know if I can. Well, I'm just going to grab this. Not there. Look at that. That roof's gone. Like pretty much. I mean, you've got the trellis, or what do you call that? I'm forgetting the word. I'm blanking, but not trellis, but the structure of the roof is still, but the shingles are gone. And that tree snapped. And, if anybody's in that upper level window, if that's a bedroom, look at the tree coming right into the home likely. So a very serious situation. Of course, that was Barrhaven. That happened earlier, and we've been talking about it extensively. That is the video right there of the Barrhaven tornado. And I mean, it's the debris that really gets me, because that is being lofted, likely hundreds of feet in the air. And look, there's still a car driving by. You can see the heavy rain. Just a very scary scene for sure. Now, this was our risk map. Just to pause for a second, let's go back to our risk map for today. Montreal, right in the center of that red. You are not out of the woods yet. We still have severe weather that is literally, quite literally, knocking on your door in Montreal. So right now you have a tornado watch. That's the brown color that's over Metro Montreal and extends quite far eastward over to Trois-Rivières, over to Drummondville. But the tornado warning, so the imminent threat, Saint-Jérôme, down through Howick, Rigaud, Mirabel, Lachute, still looking at a tornado warning, although I imagine that will probably drop for you rather soon, because the storm is likely, I'm just going to go to my radar, probably getting fairly close to being east of you now in Lachute. It is east of Lachute, but it is over top of Saint-Jérôme, Mirabel, and that's a look at the radar right now. We're going to watch this very closely, of course, Jordan. I'll send it back into the newsroom with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Of course, we do still have tornado warnings in effect for Vaudreuil as well as Solange, but we do have Jacqueline watching that very closely. Valleyfield as well as the Lachute area. You can see it all here. For those, we do have severe thunderstorm warnings still in effect for regions south of Ottawa. But we are really taking our focus onto, of course, these tornado warnings that are making their way east, as well as you said, Jacqueline. Montreal is in the line of fire when it comes to these storms. So what you need to know is, of course, is to take cover immediately if and when you do hear those tornado warnings being broadcasted. Of course, this is something to take seriously. Of course, you want to stay away from windows as well. I know taking photos, taking videos is very, tempting, but it is important to leave it to the professionals. As we have mentioned, we do have our Mark Robinson, a storm chaser just like you, Jacqueline, who is making their way as well to Barrhaven to talk to the community members about the tornado that just touched down South Ottawa today. But Jacqueline, we have been talking a lot about the effects of tornadoes, the strong wind gusts. We also have the potential for hail with this system. And of course, we have rainfall as well. But let's talk a little bit about the timing of this system. For people who may be commuting home from work today, what are the areas where that commute may be more troublesome? Where are the areas that maybe people should wait it out before trying to head home?
Okay, excellent questions. So like if you're on the eastern side of Montreal over here, you're not going to be dealing with much at the moment, but it's all coming your way. But you know, you may have the next 10 to 15 minutes to kind of maybe move a little bit eastward. But other than that, if you live anywhere west of downtown and over to the western side of the island here, you don't want to be in your car. You want to be staying put. In fact, I'd recommend anyone just to stay put till this line of storms is done. Because where is it? Well, it's right over Mirabel, Saint Jerome, Pincourt, Kirkland. It's like literally minutes away. Saint Anne de Bellevue. I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah, I'm actually, if we could just leave that graphic straight up for just a second, that radar. I'm just taking a look here. Yeah, we've got near Pincourt, actually. We've got a team of meteorologists behind the scenes that are always looking because I'm live on air and it's hard for me to constantly look. This is where the strongest rotation is right now. This is a bad situation. In fact, on radar, it doesn't show it quite as clearly here, but there's actually, let's see here if where's Pincourt? Yeah, there's actually what we call a hook echo, like so. So it's kind of like if the storm is like that, if you can imagine. This is the little notchy area. This is where winds are being sucked in, and potentially it's possible that that's producing a tornado right now. I'm not going to say for sure, but I want you to take this very seriously. There's definitely strong rotation near Pincourt. Again, hard to see on this particular radar. I appreciate that. Why don't I go back to velocity and we will show you the latest, and that might clear it up for us. Let's see here. So this is data showing winds inbound and outbound. There we go. Okay, well, not quite as clear as my other radar that I'm looking at, but this is the rotation that we're talking about. So we do see it. We've got rotation. We've got basically winds coming in this direction and winds going in this direction. So that means that there's rotation here. Okay, so we've got the red and the green. It's not showing up very strong here, but on another radar app that I'm looking at, it is strong. So, you know, Cedars, Pincourt, if anybody has any updates, what you're seeing, well, first of all, I don't want you to be out looking, but if anyone has any updates on social media, I would love to know if, there we go. So there's another area coming up. Yeah, so there's a lot of rotating storms happening right now on radar, hard to even keep up with. And let's not forget that Ottawa proper, 2 tornado warnings in about 2 hours or so. I was just about to say, will Montreal go tornado warned? They just did. You might have the latest on those locations, Jordan, but yes, tornado warning now issued for the city of Montreal.
Yep, I absolutely do. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Montreal Island area, a new tornado warning for you. Again, we still have Vaudreuil in effect, Solange and Valleyfield. Those are all in tornado warnings, but for the tornado warning ending, we do have an ending for the Lachute area, but we also have a new tornado warning again for the Saint Germain area as well. So like you said, Jacqueline, over the course of 2 hours, we've had warnings coming in, we've had warnings ended, but to be honest, I've seen more warnings coming into effect than ending. But I just want to take a look here at this map behind me. So this is some real-time data from the Hydro Quebec. Now, as you can see here, all these numbers that you see, a little bit on the outskirts, it's single digits, but as you move more into the interior, we're seeing bigger numbers, 423. Now, what this signifies is the amount of people who are currently without power in Quebec. So if we want to, add all those numbers up, it's about 500,000 people across Quebec that are currently without power due to these storms. And Jacqueline, what I think of when I think of these tornadoes is just how quickly damage happens. You've been on the ground, seen it firsthand. But of course, these power outages, it's got to be a direct result from, you know, the potential for these power lines to go down or these strong winds to tear them down, of course. So these are conditions where you do not want to be out on the roadways, because you can just see the damage that it has done to these power lines to cause this huge power grid to just end. So Jacqueline, what I am curious about for you is, what is it like when you're on the ground watching? As you can see, this tornado behind us, again, this is from Barrhaven. This happened just earlier today. This is from the Shagator. Thank you so much for sending this in. So this is just seeing just a very big tornado, but what I want to know is, how quickly does damage occur to buildings, for example, or areas surrounding the tornado? Is it a small time effect? Is it a big time effect? Let us know.
Well, there's different variables to answer that question. I mean, it depends on the size of the tornado. It depends on how fast those winds are circulating in the tornado. So we talk about the velocity. We call that gate-to-gate shear. So what that means is, how fast is one wind direction going, how fast is the other? And the faster that is, you know, going to do more damage naturally. So you can have a really large tornado that doesn't do as much damage as maybe something that is kind of coined like a drill bit, if you will, and it's just smaller, but it's doing a lot of damage with some very, very fast winds. The other thing I just want to mention, because this is kind of imminent, I mean, there is what we call a couplet, and a couplet is basically the velocity data that we've been talking about, so the inbound and outbound winds. If I could just show this map. Thank you very much to my director, Emmanuel, doing a great job in the control room today. So there we go. This couplet here, let's see here, is headed near Pincourt. We've been highlighting this the last few scans, is headed directly for Laval. This is all moving kind of in this direction. So good news for, you know, Montreal downtown, not good news for Laval. This is something to be really taking very seriously. Senneville, Kirkland, Dumontagne, I hope I'm saying that correct. The Pincourt, I think it's probably now east of you, but this is a rotating storm for sure, a defined couplet in that area. I'm going to go back to the current tornado warnings in effect. So have a look, folks. It's probably, you know, if you live in this area, and like Metro Montreal under a tornado warning, Ottawa today under a tornado warning twice. What a day. I am, you know, I'm very, very happy to say as forecasters that we isolated this area quite nicely. Quick pat on the back here, but Montreal, we talked about you. Ottawa, we talked about severe possible in your area, and it is not done. We still have a long way to go. You mentioned the power outages. If we take a look at the amount of lightning associated with these storms just in the last couple hours and right up till now, I mean, look at that. Tons of lightning, tons of, you know, potential power outages, as you mentioned, Jordan. And if we go back to the radar, let me just see if I can get that back up. Sorry, seem to be having a problem here technically. I'm going to throw it back to you, Jordan, and I'm going to come right back. I seem to, my system isn't cooperating.
No worries.
At the moment.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Of course, let's talk about what happens if you are driving. Of course, we've talked about some of the timings of these systems, and unfortunately, it is impacting some of the heavier populated times, like your commute home to work. So this is what happens if you are driving in a tornado. So let's just take this full screen to take a little bit of a look. So number one thing that you should do, of course, is go to the nearest solid shelter. If you have to drive at a 90 angle away from the tornado's path. Find lower level if no shelter is nearby, but if there's no structures around, it is important to put your seatbelt on, lower your head, and take cover. Cover your head with your hands if you happen to be driving in a tornado, but of course we do not recommend it by any means. But of course, when you are storm chasing, Jacqueline, I'm assuming you have been chasing storms, it's in the name. You have done this many of times. I've watched you myself. It is very magnificent to see someone of your expertise document these storms as they happen in real time, Jacqueline. So I want to know, what would it be like
Nice.
Are you a little bit jealous of Mark, who's heading there right now? Because I know he is going to document some of the storms, and he's also going to document the after effect as well. Because even though we're talking about the current alerts that are happening now, that doesn't mean that you're completely out of the woods when it comes to the weather element. So you still have the rain, you still have the strong winds as well. So what do you expect that Mark may see when he does make his way?
Well, you know, I'll tell you something. It's always fun to chase a storm. The best time to chase a storm is when it's out in an open field and it's doing no damage. And yeah, I love that. It's my jam. Going to a damaged path is never easy for anybody. That means emergency officials. That means someone like Mark that's headed there now. It's always sad to see when any damage happens. And this is the tornado that Mark is on his way to see. This says Ottawa, Ontario, and it's a suburb of Ottawa called Barrhaven, if you're just joining us. All kinds of different looks to the tornado, Jordan, but that will be forever in my mind, is that debris that is being lofted in the air. That doesn't always happen because, I mean, I've seen a lot of tornadoes that have been out in an open field, like something like this, for example, and you see the debris cloud at the bottom and it's kicking up dust, and it can be really kind of neat. But to see shingles and see like pieces of houses or, you know, whatever it's lofting in the air, that's not something that everybody always sees and is never nice to see. And I hope we don't see it again today, Jordan. And so, yes, Mark Robinson on his way to Barrhaven to speak with people, to get a first look at what's happened. We never want to be in anyone's way when we do that, but stay safe, everyone, because just because it's past the Ottawa region now, it's all about Montreal. All eyes on the island. We've got a strong line of storms that's now working its way. It's just minutes away from Dorval, you know, basically Dumontagne, Blainville, Saint Jerome. You've seen a very heavy-duty storm in Saint Jerome that has been showing signs of rotation on several scans. So I'm just looking here to see. Yeah, apparently we're getting some updates here too, just on the power outages that we've been reporting. Just to correct that. Apparently, most of those power outages are actually from the fires. So the 500,000 people that we've been talking about, 500,000 customers, that's actually coming from the fires, we're told. So thank you for whoever just updated us. That's the joy of live TV and live broadcasting, right? We can get some minute-to-minute updates. Speaking of which, I'm going to give you a minute-to-minute update on the rotation on these storms that are headed toward Montreal. So let's just get this up here. I'm going to get rid of my other drawing here. And we will show you the inbound and outbound winds coming up here. Oh, there we go. So now the latest scan, there we go. So you can see there is definitely some signs of rotation. Saint-Anne-de-Bellevue. Oh gosh, I hope I'm saying that okay. But that is where the rotation is currently. Again, this making its way toward Laval, Dumontagne, all those areas. Get to shelter. That's where you should be right now. You should not be, you know, in your car. You should not be outside on your front porch trying to get a video for us at the Weather Network. Don't do it. Please get to your safe spot. And we've got another area to watch very closely here. Not showing as much rotations, a bit broader, but we got to watch for this storm here, this particular area, as it makes its way to Montreal. So again, maybe we could just go to those tornado warnings. I don't know if you have the list in front of you, but I've been glued to radar here. But maybe if you do, Jordan, you could rattle those off for everybody that's impacted here. I don't know if you have them at the ready, but that's a look at them if you want to talk to that.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So for those who are in the areas that I'm about to say, this is a time where you need to take shelter immediately. Again, we apologize for any mispronunciations, but if you were in Montreal Island area, for those in Solange, for those in Vaudreuil, for those in Valleyfield, for those in Saint-Germain and Saint-Eustache area. So those are the tornado warning areas happening right now immediately. So we know that it is tempting to go take pictures, but you need to stay away from windows and glass doors. Go to a basement. If you do not have a basement, then go to the lowest point in whatever building you are, or if you're at your home, go to the lowest point of your home. If you have a mattress handy or a sleeping bag in a closet, this is a time to grab it while you're heading to the lowest point in your home so that you can cover yourself with it. And of course, it is very important to keep alert and to keep keep track of the latest updates here on the Weather Network as they happen in real time. So these are tornado warnings that are happening right now, so it is important to take shelter immediately. And of course, Jacqueline Whittle, she has been working so hard. She's been tracking these storms, these tornado warnings, and the rotation as they have been happening on the radar. And Jacqueline, every time you pull up the radar, I just see all these colors, but one color that really comes to mind is that red. I see a lot of red happening, and I see you talking a lot about rotation as well. So we've been talking a lot about how Montreal is basically in the line of fire because we had tornado warnings a little bit earlier west, but now we're heading east as we get into the afternoon and evening hours. So for those in those areas, what should they keep top of mind, Jacqueline?
Well, you bring up a great point, like evening hours, right? When we start to lose the sun, that's a good thing in that we'll lose daytime heating, so our energy is going to kind of diminish, which is good for the storm threat. But the worst time to have any sort of rotating storm is at night, because then you have no idea what's kind of coming at you. As a storm chaser, we don't chase at night, never. I've only seen one tornado at night, and it was terrifying, and I'll never do it again. Tornado warning, a new one, Mascouche, I hope I'm saying that right, Saint-Jérôme. I feel like we've been talking about Saint-Jérôme for forever here. Saint-Eustache area. So I just want to go to, there's Saint-Eustache coming up on my map. The reason I'm showing you this is not radar anymore. This is looking at supercell potential. When we talk about supercell, that's when the updraft of a storm is rotating. That's how you get a tornado. It was a supercell that moved through Barrhaven today. This is showing where the greatest risk for supercellular, I don't know if that's a word, I may have just made that up, but supercellular storms in this area. So look where it's like maxed out here, Saint Adele, not too far. This is model data, not too far from where we have current tornado warnings. Saint-Jérôme, that's under a tornado warning. So it's no shock that we're seeing the potential for rotation in these storms because the model did a very good job at picking that up. Now, the other thing I want to just go to is the velocity. Oh, geez, I'm clicking all over the place here. But let me go back to velocity because this is where we see those inbound and outbound winds. And if I just go to the latest scan, wow. So you can see two areas of rotation that stand out to me. Up here near Saint-Jérôme, another one down here, got to watch closely too. That's the one that's headed toward Laval. This particular area is going that direction. And then another area that I actually highlighted earlier. So we've got kind of three areas of embedded rotation. And sometimes that can happen when you get a line of storms. And that's what we have going on here. Do you see how they're kind of all connected? I'll show you what I mean. Pause this. So basically we have radar that just left. There we go. We have isolated storm cells that are kind of off on their own, or we have a collection of storm cells that are kind of what I like to say joining hands. They're kind of holding hands and they're marching forward. And we just got the latest radar scan, you can see. So this is an indication of very strong wind gusts. Do you see how you were talking about the colors, Jordan? Red, yellow, green, blue. What that means is that's likely a shelf cloud moving into the city of Montreal. I wouldn't be shocked if we get some photos and things like that coming out on social media that shows a leading edge of a shelf cloud moving into Montreal. The problem is that when you get these lines of storms that are joining hands, you can get embedded rotation still. And you got to watch for these little areas of notchy stuff, like areas that are kind of notched in. So we're watching for that. I know it's kind of a hard thing to depict on that particular view of radar, but the point is that it's a line of storms bringing strong winds, heavy rain, all of that now pretty well on top of the island of Montreal, which is tornado warned currently. Dorval, right over top of you. Kirkland, Dumotin, Blainville, it's happening. Montreal proper, right downtown, still getting closer to you. So expect those strong winds and expect the potential for rotating storms that are moving in that general direction. So much to get into, Jordan. I'm going to send it back to you. Maybe we have some questions from people. yeah, I'll send it back over to you for the time being.
So Jacqueline, in the meantime, she'll look through your questions, she'll look through her comments, and of course, she will do her absolute best to answer them. But thank you for doing your comments. Thank you for sending us your information, because it does help us give the most up-to-date and accurate information. Of course, we are looking at the power outages. We have seen your comments saying that some of them are due to the James Bay area fires as well, but it is also associated with the storm. So we kind of have that double whammy happening in Quebec. So in terms of the total, when it comes to power outages, 500,000 people without power in these regions due to the fires and also due to the current storms as well, the lightning as well as the wind gusts. So these are times where, you know, you definitely want to have a lot of food on hand if you can, but of course, if you are in those tornado warning areas, make sure to take shelter immediately. Of course, make sure to bring your mobile device with you so that you can stay up to date when it comes to the weather alerts as they happen in real time as well. But it's also important, of course, to take cover and to make sure that you are not driving on the roads. Of course, we do have our Mark Robinson. He is headed to Barrhaven. Now, Barrhaven is an area south of Ottawa, south of Quebec, that has had some issues when it comes to tornadoes. So take a look at this. As you can see, this was sent in here. This was a tornado that just ripped in from Barrhaven in South Ottawa. This was sent in by Amon, who scripts. As you watch this, you can just see the tornado, its power. You can see those gusts of wind just tearing apart the shingles on the rooftops. And of course, we've seen roofs already that have been completely teared off of houses in these areas. And of course, this is a suburb in south of Ottawa, so lots of people populated in this region. But there's also a lot of debris that is flying through the air as well. So of course, taking pictures, taking videos is tempting, but it's very important that you stay away from glass because, again, of this debris as well, that is a factor. You do not want to be in the line of fire when it comes to a tornado warning. And of course, this one did touch down in Barrhaven earlier today. Now, Jacqueline, people have been coming into our YouTube as we are streaming live here on the Weather Network, and I know that they have questions for you. So has a question come up that you would like to answer?
Yeah, I do have a couple things I want to, not so much questions, but just an update. So the tornado watch has been dropped. So remember the watch and the warning, the difference between, right? The watch was issued several hours ago in advance of this event. The tornado watch now has been dropped for Brockville, Kingston, South Frontenac, City of Ottawa, Gatineau, Smith Falls, Renfrew, Arnprior, Calabogie. So good news for you. You're in the clear. You can breathe in. It's been an active day. But now we have a new tornado warning for Laval. That's just been issued. And you can see here on this map, I'm going to just pause this and I'm going to get rid of the radar so you can see exactly where those magenta colored tornado warnings are in effect. So you can see right now, Saint-Jérôme, Laval, Montreal, Rigaud, down toward the south, Howick. I hope I'm saying that right. Yes, so, you know, if you live in those areas, please, especially Laval. I've been watching the storm on radar for some time, headed toward Laval, so I'm not shocked to see that that actually just got a tornado warning. Let's go back to the storm cell. Let's take off the warning for a minute. And there we go. So there's the line of storms. And I'd mentioned, like, when these storms are kind of lined out, we have to watch for those little indents or those notchy areas. That's one of those notchy areas right into Laval. So obviously Environment Canada, excuse me, is seeing the possible rotation. If I go back to my velocity product where we show inbound and outbound winds, and we do have one question I'm going to get to in just a second, I just thought about. But let's go to the most recent scan on our velocity data. There we go. So there's why Laval is looking at a tornado warning, because we're seeing those inbound and outbound winds, the brighter reds, the slightly brighter greens. It doesn't come up all that perfectly on this particular radar product, but that's why. So this storm is moving kind of east-northeast toward Laval, and make sure you're taking shelter if you live in that area. You are currently under a tornado warning, different from a watch. Down toward the south, you know, you can see a couple other areas showing some signs of rotation. Will we have to watch that closely for Montreal? This is the area, the latest add to the tornado warning is right here south of Dumontin, moving up toward Laval. let's go back to the actual tornado warning map, and maybe you could speak to those areas that are currently under that tornado warning, if you could.
Yep, absolutely. So let's start
Jordan,
first.
could you do that? Thank you.
Of course, we have some tornado warnings that actually have ended. So those have ended in Solange as well as Valleyfield. So that's good news. For the new tornado warnings, we do have, as you mentioned, Jacqueline, the Laval area. We also have Montreal Island area. We have Vaudreuil area, and we have Saint Germain as well as Saint EUSTACHE area. So those are the areas where you need to take shelter immediately. Of course, we've been talking a lot about tornado warnings as well as watches. And for those in the pink area, that is the warning that we've been discussing. But of the people in the orange, that is the watches area. And of course, we do have severe thunderstorm warnings and watches that are hugging these areas as well. So we kind of have back-to-back watches and warnings, whether it's a tornado or a severe thunderstorm. But I think, Jacqueline, you made a really good point that it's really good to mention what is the difference between maybe a tornado watch versus a warning, maybe for people who are tuning in and hearing it for the first time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a tornado watch is usually issued well ahead of the event, so maybe 2-3 hours in advance of a tornadic event, and basically that's forecasters seeing the proper ingredients in the atmosphere that are favorable for tornadic development. And then when you get a tornado warning, that's when we're actually seeing evidence on radar. We might be seeing evidence on the ground with someone that's out storm chasing. Maybe someone has a photo of something, maybe a funnel or a tornado potentially touching down. So very different situation. This, I mean, even though this has not been rated yet by Environment Canada and hasn't actually been declared, you know, an EF1 or EF2, and that will be coming soon, we know it's a tornado. It's very easy to call this a tornado because we see it in contact with the ground. We see the debris being lofted in this area. I don't think that home was impacted by the tornado. I think that's a new build, by the way, it looks like to me. But there were homes that were impacted by the tornado. There's the latest tornado warning for Laval, Montreal Island area, Vaudreuil, I believe is how you say that. And the tornado warning ended for Solange, Valleyfield, and Beauharnois, I believe is how you say that. So if you live in these areas, now is the time to get to shelter, okay? And also, I want to go back because if you've been with us, and thank you for staying with us, you might recall that I was talking about when the colors are tightly packed together, the reds, the yellows, the greens, the blues. It's what we call a tight reflectivity gradient on our radar. It sounds very nerdy. Okay, what it means is that usually there's a shelf cloud out ahead of this storm, and usually it means strong winds. Well, I am going to report that Montreal has recorded a 98-kilometer-an-hour wind gust as a result of this line of storms moving in. Not to mention the inner workings of the storm, the rotation in some of these areas we're watching very closely. That's why the tornado warnings are issued. Tornado warnings are not issued for straight line wind event. They are, so straight line wind meaning damaging winds, but they are issued when we talk about rotation in storms. I'm going to just bring up another product that we have, to something we haven't been talking about. And thank you so much to Melinda Singh, one of our meteorologists, for just sharing this with me right now in real time, because we're not talking about the hail because we're so focused on the tornado potential, but there has been some hail. And this is basically what we do. We track where these hail swaths have fallen. So it's a pretty good indication. This is estimated by radar. But basically you can see Saint Jerome likely saw some hail, and it's all moving in the same overall storm motion. Storm motion that our storms are going in. So, you know, Laurentides, Saint Julien, those areas, maybe Joliette might be getting into some hail later if this core holds together. And then also if I take you down to this area, so if we go to close to Dumontaine, Saint Dorothy, near Laval, there's some probably small hail. Saint Anne de Bellevue, maybe you saw some small hail, it's possible. But thank you for sharing that with me, our team of Mets, because that's something we have not been really watching for, because I guess because the tornado threat is is the most dangerous threat when it comes to a storm. So hail can be damaging, and it's not fun to have things destroyed by hail, but it's a lot worse to be dealing with a tornado. So this is why we're watching this very closely. Let's put those tornado warnings back on behind the system. So we've got the radar overlaid. Laval, this is likely a few minutes behind. So Laval, Dorval, Blainville, probably past you. I would say this is pretty close to being on top of downtown Montreal any minute, if not already. Sometimes there's a bit of delay in the radar. It's just how it works with the radar. So Montreal, it's possible that's right over top of you right now, but definitely some strong winds. Once again, we have a report of a 98-kilometer-an-hour wind gust. We have a tornado warning still in effect for Metro Montreal. Looks like L'Assomption just added to this as well. Looks like Terrebonne also added to this. I'm going to just pause this and turn off the radar so we can see the latest area. There we go. So Blainville, Bois-Briand, Laval, Montreal Est, that's east in French. I'm trying my best here. Laurentides, Saint-Jérôme, Terrebonne. Okay, that's the whole area. That's been a new tornado warning added in this region at this point. So that's a look at the latest. The brown that you're looking at, of course, is the tornado watch. Some of the areas that have been removed from the tornado watch: Ottawa, you're out. Smith Falls, eastern parts of Ontario, Napanee, Kingston. I don't know if Napanee was actually in it, but Kingston was. Brockville, everybody's out of the tornado watch. You can breathe in now, but lots of active weather still going on, Jordan, across Metro Montreal. Seeing if we have any. Oh, yeah. Okay, someone's asking about red and green. Okay, so what do the colors mean? Good question. Excellent question. So depends on what type of radar you're looking at, but if we're looking at just straight radar reflectivity like this, basically the darker the red, the heavier the rain being reflected back to the radar. So you can see over here, I can't really circle, but see where I'm scratching up over there. Look on the legend, that's a dark color, that means heavy rain. You get into the yellow, that's going to be less rain on the legend, less heavy rain. Get over to this area, lighter rain, okay? So that's why I said rather quickly you're probably seeing a shelf cloud moving into this area, because there's probably little to no rain to all of a sudden a heavy downpour, all of a sudden heavy wind gusts. So that's kind of what that means. I hope that clears things up. But the red is indicating the heavy rain. Send it back into the newsroom with you, Jordan. And we're going to show some, oh, look at that. Look at that. There's a shelf cloud. It's like we just ordered it up.
You did, absolutely, Jacqueline. We'll do whatever you say here, of course. But of course, you've done such a good job tracking this band of storms as they happen. And of course, we've been talking about the impacts. They are moving east, but I want to talk about something that has already happened just to show you some of the damage that has occurred. So this is again in Ottawa. This is from Enjoy the Tom. And as you can see here, you can see the windows are just absolutely shattered. We also have shingles off the wall, and all this here on the ground, that appears to be glass that has shattered from the window. So this, of course, is where the tornado touched down just south of Ottawa. So you can see just the impacts that happen from a storm like this. So those in the tornado warnings, it's time to take those very seriously, of course. But we have been talking about the timing of these storms. A lot of them are happening in the afternoon. They're currently happening as well, but they will be impacting likely your evening commute. So that means you definitely do not want to be in the car when these storms are happening, but we are going to throw to a story now that'll teach us what to do if we do happen to be transporting during a tornado.
Severe weather can strike at any time. There's typically only minutes, if not just seconds, to respond. So it's especially important to always know what you should and shouldn't do, no matter where you are. If you find yourself driving on the road when severe weather strikes, it can actually be a very dangerous situation. So what should you do? First up, you need to assess the situation for immediate danger. And when you're in a car, you likely only have a few options. The first and safest line of defense would be seeking somewhere indoors, centrally located, in a solid structure to ride out the storm.
But if a tornado is already too close, you're going to want to pull over, put your car in park, and leave your seatbelt on. Next, you'll want to duck as far below the line of windows as you can and cover your head.
It's important to keep your car running so the airbags will still work. They could provide you with some additional protection. Another option is to get out of your car and into a ditch. When you're below ground level, you'll have some shield from flying debris and winds. Remember, the most dangerous part of a tornado comes from flying debris.
Just make sure you get as far away from your car as possible so it doesn't roll on top of you. Next, you're going to want to lie down, face first, and cover your head with your arms.
You may also consider seeking shelter under a bridge or overpass, but not so fast. You could actually be making things worse.
While it may seem like you'll get more shelter in an overpass, it actually can create a more dangerous situation. The narrow space amplifies the already strong winds tornadoes bring. Any small debris could turn into a dangerous missile. Not to mention, you're blocking the roadway and you're putting drivers behind you at risk.
Remember these tips, share the knowledge with your family and friends, and who knows, it might just save a life this severe weather season.
Thank you so much, Michael. Of course, we've been talking about the tornado that touched down and the damages that occurred. You can see it here in this imagery behind me, taken again by some folks on Twitter. Tornado was ripping away roofs in Barrhaven in Ottawa. So this happened today, and we are currently watching for tornado warnings. Now, these are the areas that are affected. There's the Saint Germain area, the Saint Eustache. We also have Laval area, Montreal Island area, and we also have Vaudreuil. So these are some of the areas that are impacted from this tornado warning. So if you are there, it is important to take shelter immediately. Stay away from windows, go to the basement or to the lowest point in the building, take cover with a mattress or sleeping bag if you have it on hand, and of course continue to watch the Weather Network on our live streaming and as well on our broadcast. But Jacqueline, we've had some questions come in. We've had a lot of people also asking about the difference in colors when we're looking at the radar map, but I'd love to know what are currently happening when it comes to the rotation of these storms. What do you see? What stands out for you?
Okay, so right now I'm looking at hail, a product that shows the potential for hail swath, and that's what stands out to me in Saint Jerome over to Laurentide. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. This is where we're seeing the biggest hail, just north of north and west of L'Assomption, L'Epiphanie, I think is how you would say that, and then over down here, we're seeing a hail swath there too, looking like a little less near Roxborough, south of Dumontagne. But yeah, that's what kind of stands out, is definitely we're seeing some hail produced with these storms. The other thing is, based on Montreal and the radar, you know, I can't help but think that there's been a shelf cloud that has come into the city, and we probably will see some interesting pictures of that. Someone was asking what a shelf cloud is. If I can get a graphic to explain that, I will come back and answer that. Well, there's a good visual. That's a sort of weaker defined shelf cloud, but basically what happens with a shelf cloud is you've got cold air that's coming from the downdraft of the storm, and it's coming toward the surface, and you get this, there's a nice cloud to ground lightning bolt there too. You get this sort of shelf looking cloud that's sort of out ahead of the storm, and it looks kind of like a big spaceship, or maybe like, I don't know, it's just like a big circular look. It's the best way to explain it. But it usually means that there's strong wind gusts potential coming in with a big shelf cloud. And looking at the radar, I wouldn't be shocked if that's what we saw coming into Montreal. I've got someone here, so is the tornado going to come here in Montreal? So the storm right now is currently right over top of Montreal, and yes, we can't rule out the chance of any tornadic development today, because we know that we have we have tornadic potential in the environment. But currently, no, we don't have any tornado reports in Montreal. I'm also just going to go back. What I think is more likely happening in Montreal is a shelf cloud. I know I just mentioned this, but I think I may have a handy dandy definition here. There we go. And this will kind of maybe clear it up. Maybe you saw something like this coming into Montreal. It's kind of like, so you've got warm air over top of the cold outflow winds, the cold winds coming out ahead of the thunderstorm, and it creates this shelf-looking storm-like feature. And yes, you can still get spin-ups. We call them gustnados. where you get a brief spin up. They usually don't do much in the way of damage, but you can have tornadic spin ups that happen along the leading edge of a gust front or a shelf cloud. But basically a low hanging horizontal cloud that forms along the gust front, that cold pool, with a collection of thunderstorms, or the leading edge of a thunderstorm. Always kind of cool to see. But yeah, that's likely what happened in Montreal. What happened in the Ottawa region, very different. We had an isolated storm cell that started to rotate, and we saw debris being lofted in the air with the Barrhaven, Ontario tornado. So this is about 17 kilometers south and west of Ottawa proper. It's kind of a suburb. And our very own, I should say, storm hunter Mark Robinson and my chase partner, he's headed there. He's going to go and check it out and give us an update and give us a report. But yeah, you don't usually see debris clouds like that on videos coming out of the nation's capital, that's for sure. You also don't see shots like this. A piece of lumber literally just plunged right into the side of a home. It's sticking out of siding. Those are some very strong winds to be able to do that. So I'm be looking forward to getting the latest report. You see a complete roof ripped right off of that home, not just shingles, but all the soffits and sidings. And I found out what that word was. I was struggling earlier. Truss system of a home. So the truss system is still in place, but the shingles and the roof is gone. And you can certainly see some tree damage. Jordan, what's the latest that we have? Any updates coming into the newsroom? Do you have an update maybe on the most recent tornado warnings in effect?
Absolutely, Jacqueline. So we do have a tornado warning that has just officially ended, according to Environment Canada. So Vaudreuil no longer in a tornado warning. But for the places that currently are in a tornado warning, we still have the Laval area, Montreal Island area. We also have, of course, those ones are pretty much what we have from Environment Canada as of 4/11. So it's good to keep up to date with this, of course, and all those areas in the pink as well. If you're in this region, this means that it is important to take shelter immediately. And of course, you've been talking as well, Jacqueline, about some of the wind gusts that have been reported at some airports as well. So do you have any of those numbers that have been coming in terms of how strong are these winds with this system?
Yes, I do, Jordan. The latest update that we have is from Montreal, and they actually reported a wind gust of 98 kilometers an hour. So nothing to shake a stick at, right? I mean, that's a damaging wind, and it continues to move eastward. In fact, the core of the thunderstorm is now over Côte Saint-Luc, Laval, Terrebonne, Montreal, right downtown, and making its way through Varennes, Boucherville, Brossard, and Longueuil, I think is how you say that. Gosh, I hope I'm saying these okay. We did have a comment on YouTube saying that we're doing a pretty good job with the French pronunciation. So good on us, Jordan, for giving it our best shot here. But yeah, we've got the core of the thunderstorm now right over Montreal, which means it's likely downpouring there. Strong wind gusts right downtown. Somebody did ask, is Ottawa in the clear? Yes, you are. The answer to that is yes. So now, many cleanup efforts can start to begin in areas just southwest of the city, near that area where the tornado was in Barrhaven. So yeah, you're in the clear, which is great news. In fact, most of southwestern Ontario, it's done. Not most, all of southwestern Ontario, it's done. Let's give you a big view here of the overall look at the system. So the area of low pressure is kind of set up there. We've got a cold front triggering the storms out ahead of it. Warm front kind of extends up here. This is the area of the instability. This is where we're still looking at the storm threat across the greater Montreal area. So let's just go zoom in now. So there we go. That's really where all the activity is. And this is going to be making its way past the city of Montreal in due time. It shouldn't be too much longer, but we do have that tornado warning for Laval area, Montreal Island area, as Jordan mentioned, and Vaudreuil area. So those areas are the ones that we're really watching very closely. And yeah, lots to lots to watch on the radar, lots to watch on social media. If you are living in downtown Montreal, please get to shelter. You are currently under a tornado warning. You don't want to be outside. You don't want to be driving home. This will be past you soon. So just be patient and we'll take you through every step of the way and keep you and your family safe. Areas like Blainville, Laval, it's almost past. Mirabel, you're in the clear now. Rigaud, Van Cleek Hill, Hawkesbury, and back to the west toward Alexandria and all that area, Cornwall, it's just about past you, all of the activity. So we're going in the right direction, but Metro Montreal still has some pretty strong storms that are right over top of them, Jordan.
Absolutely, Jacqueline. Let's just take a look here about the risk map here. As you can see, the red is where you don't want to be. You want to be taking action and making sure that you are in shelter immediately because this is a severe likely category. Of course, Jacqueline, you've already been talking as well about hail that we have seen. So large hail is associated with this system as well. We do have heavy rain and we've already seen the damage that the wind has caused. And we have also already reported one tornado again in Barrhaven. So this is just happening over the course of a couple of hours in the Ottawa and Quebec region. And you can just see, let's pull up some of the visuals from the tornado that touched down earlier today. As you can see, people's reactions, can you hear it in the background? They're screaming. They haven't seen something like this, I'm assuming. And of course, you can see how powerful these winds are. All those little things in the sky, yeah, that are shingles that have been torn off of rooftops. Now, this is a suburb in Ottawa, so this is a populated area. I'm assuming that there are families here, and there is going to be a lot of cleanup after this storm. Now, Jacqueline, you also told me that this is what's called a rope tornado as well. And we also have some more footage coming in as it happens. But we've been talking a lot about this tornado that has touched down again. And Mark Robinson, one of our storm chasers here, along with Jacqueline Whittle, but Robinson is on his way to document the cleanup after this tornado in Barrhaven. So he's going to be on the ground. He's going to be knocking on people's doors, and he's going to be talking to them about what happened. Of course, he's there to do more help. He's not there to harm by any means, but of course, he wants to document what happened. But there's also the Northern Tornadoes Project, Environment Canada, who will likely be there as well to, do some diagnostics to see exactly what the effects of this tornado was. But that is somewhat in the past. We are currently in the state of tornado watches as well as warnings as the system continues to move east. And Jacqueline, you've been documenting it so well. You've been looking at all the rotations. So you said that Montreal is kind of in the line of fire right now. Is that still the case?
It is. They've got the core of the storm over top of them, but I want to show something. This is actually one of our own meteorologists that works for us at the Weather Network, Andre Monet, and he knows what he's looking at. He's looking at a shelf cloud over Montreal, just like we were talking about. And what you're looking at there is probably some hail, at the very least some very heavy rain where it's kind of glowing that green color. That's looking into the core of the storm, and that happens due to the refraction of light against the ice and all kinds of different reasons that it kind of glows like that. But possibly some hail in there, at the very least some heavy rain. But do you see that leading edge of the storm? That's what I've been talking about. See if I can draw. Can I draw on this? No, I can't, I guess. But that's the leading edge of the storm, and we call that a shelf cloud, and that's what it looks like. So I kind of figured that that's what Montreal was getting as it was moving closer to them. Not that you can't still get rotation that happens in a line of storms like that, but that is indeed a classic shelf cloud, and probably still getting it here. But interestingly enough, as I say this, okay, so what, okay, I'm going to show you here. This is where the shelf cloud area probably would be. So if you live in Brossard, if you live in any of these areas over here, you're looking back into the storm. That would probably be what you would see, shelf. We've got this little notch area though near Brossard. I'm concerned about rotation in that area, so we got to be very careful about that. Of course, much of this area is tornado warned at this time, so please do take it very seriously. If there was any sort of rotation, just quick glance, it'd probably be in and around this area. So just kind of south and east of the city of Montreal. A couple questions coming in. I don't know if I'm saying that city right, but is Longueuil. I hope that's right. But are they safe? They're asking if that area is safe. Okay, I'm going to try and help you out here. Trying to even remember where Longueuil is on them. Oh, there it is. So just, okay, no, not necessarily safe because you've got the core of the storm right over top of you. So depends on what you mean by safe. You've got some heavy rain, potentially hail. Longueuil. Okay, hopefully I'm saying that right. Thank you, Jenny. Someone behind the scenes helping me out here. You've got the most intense part of the storm actually over Longueuil. Okay, I think I've got it right. Sorry. But yeah, you've got probably heavy rain, possibly some hail in there. Côte Saint-Luc, sorry. It is now past you likely, so that's good news. And always remember the radar is just a couple minutes behind. So it's possible that this storm is actually closer to areas like Brossard and Boucherville. Those areas probably getting the brunt of the heavy, core of this thunderstorm. Some encouraging news, though. I don't think we have any new issued tornado warnings at this point. What about Ottawa, Orleans? In the clear? Yes, you are in the clear. Yeah, you are all the way back to Ottawa. I know it's been such an active day with 2 tornado warnings for the nation's capital issued today. Very active Thursday afternoon, but you are in the clear. Gatineau region, areas like Chelsea, Quebec, all those areas seeing a lot of active weather today. It's all past you now. So really, I mean, Cornwall, it's past you, but we could still see like Alexandria, Lancaster, those areas, Van Cleek Hill, Hawkesbury, weaker thunderstorms, nothing like what you saw before. And as I anticipated, this second line of storms has not been nearly as strong as this first line because the atmosphere is overworked, right? We've had cold air and heavy rain and yeah, so it tends to lose a lot of the instability. So we've got a lot of questions. Yeah, okay. We've got I guess everyone's feeling really appreciative of the latest answers. So thanks for staying with us. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have. So fire away. And I'm here and Jordan's here and we will do our best to answer any questions that you might have. Severe thunderstorm warning, Jordan, replaces the tornado warning for Laval area. Not shocked to hear that because, and Saint Eustache is also out of it. So that's because most of this activity has passed that area. So the tornado warning has been lifted and we have the severe thunderstorm warning, which I would guess wouldn't be too long either because this very strong batch of storms is east of Laval, Saint Eustache, those areas. But we do have to watch for some residual storms here into the evening hours that could be moving into the same area. So severe warned at this time, but tornado warning has been lifted. So maybe, Jordan, I'll send it back over to you with the latest look at the tornado warnings and the latest areas that are still under the tornado warning.
It as well, but just to give it a little bit of time, we're going to throw to this great story now. We're going to talk about the differences between lightning strikes, and we'll be right back with you with the latest tornado warnings.
Core of the storm, a lot of the lightning. Jeez, that was close. Wow, that is why you stay in the car.
On average, each year in Canada, there are between 2 and 3 lightning-related deaths and 180 lightning-related injuries. The numbers have dramatically improved over the last few decades, with Canadians better understanding lightning and practicing safety. You've heard us say this before. When thunder roars, go indoors. It's saving lives. This is Health and Weather Extended, and today, we are going to talk about lightning strikes. It's incredibly rare for lightning to directly strike a person. However, lightning happens and travels fast. Dr. David Sills, Executive Director of the Northern Tornadoes Project, explains how ground currents and side flashes can cause injury.
So with the ground current, the lightning hits the ground, and if the person is nearby, then the current travels along the ground, then into the victim. Usually, if that distance is only about 10 meters, that can cause a fatality. If it's even 15 to 30 meters away from the place where the lightning struck, that can cause an injury. So you don't have to be right next to the lightning to get injured. It can be quite a distance away. The other type of lightning strike for a person is with a side flash, and that's when lightning hits a tall object and then partway down to the ground, it arcs over to the person standing nearby, and the current goes through them. So that can result in injuries or fatalities.
Lightning can be incredibly dangerous, reaching temperatures of 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. To put this into perspective, the surface of the sun is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That means lightning is 5 times hotter than the sun. And that's why you never want to find yourself in a scenario like this. Let's say you witness someone fall to the ground after experiencing that strike. Here's how you would need to react.
Be sure to assess your own level of risk. What may be the case that if you're in that same environment where somebody else has just sustained an injury of that nature, although it's very, very slim, we want to reduce the chance that anyone else, like a potential rescuer or a layperson rescuer, is going to become the next patient. But for sure, while this is occurring, phone 911 immediately, or have someone else phone 911 and report back to you after 911 has been phoned. And if it's safe to do so, of course, approaching the patient and assessing them as quickly as possible is very, very important. Whether or not you need to assist them into a recovery position while you're waiting for help, or whether you may need to actually initiate CPR if that person has gone unconscious and they are not breathing.
People who are affected by a lightning strike may develop a rash, and it takes on a pretty interesting shape, almost looking like a strike itself. It's called the Lichtenberg figure. They are known to form when an electrical surge causes blood vessels to burst. These rashes are incredibly rare and usually are not permanent. There are many fascinating elements when it comes to lightning, but the one thing you should always remember is this.
In general, if you can hear thunder, then you should be heading indoors. You should also stay there for 30 minutes after the last rumble of thunder or lightning flash that you see. And that's because people often go back outside too soon and maybe get hit by lightning. It's about 1/3 of lightning casualties are caused by people going out too soon after the storm has gone by.
Keep in mind, if you are out on the water and you see flashes in the distance, get to shore immediately. Water is a great conductor, and if lightning strikes the lake, it can spread quite far. Thanks for tuning in to Health and Weather Extended, the chat about lightning strikes and how to react.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Of course, we want to keep you updated with the current tornado warning. So these were just issued by Environment Canada. So we have the Raw Dawn area, we have Mascouche area, we have Saint Germain, and we have Saint Eustache area as well in these tornado warnings. So if you are in these areas, it is important that you take shelter immediately if you have not already. Bring a phone with you, stay away from windows and glass doors, go to a basement or the lowest point in the building that you are at. If you're at home and you have the ability to grab a mattress or sleeping bag, it's great to do so for coverage, and of course keep up to date with our weather coverage as well. But we've been talking about tornado warnings and watches, but we do have a confirmed tornado that did touch down earlier today in south of Ottawa. So this is from Allison here. This is at Barrhaven. As you can see, this is the debris just being sucked into the tornado here. Now this looks like a shopping mall as well. So you can see all the cars that are basically below all of this wind gust that is happening as well. I think she has another image that we can showcase to you as well. Thank you so much again for everyone who is sending in their videos, but it is important, of course, that if you are in the line of fire of a tornado warning, or if a tornado has touched down in your area, it is important to put down the phone and just go to safety as well. And no better person knows this than Jacqueline Whittle. She has been a storm chaser for many years. You have been on the ground chasing tornadoes just like this one. Now, Jacqueline, when you are on the ground, what are some of the things that you keep top to mind when it comes to safety? Because of course you want to document something like this, but you also have to keep your safety and the camera person's safety in mind.
Yeah, that's right. It's usually Mark, myself, and a camera person, or sometimes it's just Mark and I. And yeah, the main thing I'm always thinking about is having an escape route. So when I'm chasing a storm, I'm never in the most dangerous part of the storm. I'm usually out ahead of it, and I'm already thinking 3 roads ahead, if you will. I have a mapping, I'm always glued to my mapping location software, because I want to make sure that I can get ahead of it, maybe drop south, maybe go east, whatever I have to do to stay ahead of the storm. So it's very different than if it was in my home, or if there's been times when I've been in Tornado Alley and I've been in a hotel for the evening and I've got a tornado warned storm headed over my hotel. Well, that's a very different kind of vulnerable feeling. I'm actually more scared in the hotel than I am in my car chasing, because at least in my car I can get away. I have a plan. When you're in a structure yourself and you have a tornado warned storm coming over you, you can't leave. You don't want to leave. You want to get to shelter. You want to stay put. So, yeah, I've been on both sides of the coin, and it just kind of depends. But, as we look ahead to the evening hours, we're watching for a lot of this activity to be moving east of the city of Montreal next. It's still in Montreal, but the heaviest rain is past. Areas like Laval clearing up, Mirabel, Saint-Jérôme, Lachute, some of these areas that have really dealt with a lot of active weather today, starting to see clearing on the radar, but still going to be working its way eastward. So now Joliet, Varennes, Boucherville, the eastern side of Montreal still dealing with some heavy rain. Brossard, those areas, all looking, Saint-Denis, all expecting some heavy rain if it isn't already over top of you now. Trois-Rivières, all of this making its way toward you. Drummondville, Granby, those areas all expected to get active weather. And in fact, that was the area that we were really watching today for the potential of rotation. But as we get later into the evening hours, we're going to start to lose a lot of the thunderstorm energy, which is good news, but we still have to watch for very strong wind gusts. So if you could just leave that radar up there for a minute, I just want to, I'm consulting with a few other meteorologists here. Yeah, so if we look at areas, let's see here with St. Thomas, let's see if I can find this here. Yeah, a lot of these little notchy areas here this is where we got to watch for very strong wind gusts. So you can see here, Saint Joseph, de Sorel, all these areas, these little towns, and Contresor, Saint Denis, all expecting very strong wind gusts as this line of storms, anywhere a line ahead of the storm is where you're in that risk. I'm kind of, wearing lots of hats, looking in different directions right now if I seem scattered. But that is the line of storms, and it's a powerful one. But it is going to start to weaken, I presume, as it goes a little bit further east. It may not, but I have a feeling it will. It's dropped a lot of rain, a lot of hail, and we haven't had a tornado warning in a little while, which is good, like a new tornado warning. But I think the biggest risk now is going to be these damaging wind gusts, Jordan, out ahead of the line of this storm complex here. So anywhere out ahead of it, if you live in these regions, you may not be under a tornado warning, but expect some very strong winds.
Absolutely. And Jacqueline, you said it was reported in Montreal Airport as well that it was 98-kilometer-hour gust winds. So this is definitely a very powerful system, something to take very seriously as well. And I know we're talking about the timing with these storms as well. It is currently happening now. We have tornado warnings for areas, but it's important if it is in your evening commute to not get on the roadways during this time, especially if you are in the red, because it's just not worth it. But we've also spoken about some large hail as well with this system. We have heavy rain, damaging winds, and of course we have already reported one tornado in Barrhaven, which is just south of Ottawa. So we have a lot to deal with. We have a lot of watches and warnings in effect as well, but we also have those thunderstorms again that are on the back end of the system. And Jacqueline, you've been mentioning that there is something to watch out for, another band of potential storms as well. So you did mention it's losing some, energy, which is a great thing, but how long do you anticipate for people to be under, this threat? Because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, when will we be okay to travel home, or when will we see, the light at the end of the tunnel?
All good questions, Jordan. I'm going to do my best to answer them. I think that, yes, while some of these storm complexes are starting to kind of lose a little bit of energy, it's certainly not all done yet. We get a lot of questions, okay, are we safe in Montreal? Not quite, almost. It's just about past the city of Montreal, but we do still have to watch for these embedded areas of rotation, and we have to watch for very strong wind gusts. That's the main risk, and this is usually how things play out toward the end of a severe weather event, where all of the storms tend to kind of join. When they kind of join forces, and I always say, like, they hold hands and become this big line of storms. This is often what can happen at the end of the day. We're seeing that, and we're seeing what we usually see when storms are lining out. We get this kind of look. It's called a shelf cloud. So you get a lot of strong winds, you get a lot of heavy rain, and you get this shelf looking cloud. And usually it does mean damaging winds. By definition, it's a low hanging horizontal cloud that forms along a gust front. A gust front is when cold air is pooling out ahead of a very strong line of storms. So it happens on the leading edge of the storms. I'm actually just, if we could take that full screen, thank you. I'm just going to read this here. This is in a different, okay, we've got a tornado warning now for southern Manitoba, actually, for the RM of Hanover and Steinbach. Do we want to go to that? We can certainly go to that if anybody's interested. How about I'm just going to make the executive decision. I know you're watching us from Quebec, but let's go check this storm out in Manitoba. Yep, okay, here we go. Let's put on the warnings. There it is. So tornado warning in Steinbach. I haven't really been watching the severe weather setup in Manitoba today, but boy, they've seen a lot in the way of active weather across Western Canada, Alberta in particular. But there you go. This is a storm that has been tornado warned, is showing signs of rotation, moving in a different direction than our storms in Quebec. This is kind of moving in a east-southeast direction, kind of like this. And if we're looking for any signs of rotation, it's going to be right here at a quick glance, because, and here's the difference. You notice how this storm is all kind of off on its own. There's nothing impeding it. It's wide open for business. There's no other storms interacting with it. It's kind of starting to line out with these cells here, but there's a lot of available energy. In fact, that tornado warning looks like it just got extended. Does anyone know back in studio if that has been extended? That would be helpful. I think they're going to let me know here in a second. But there's the tornado warning in Manitoba. So maybe you have it, Jordan. Do you have the latest on that extended tornado warning?
We're still looking into it, Jacqueline. We're going to be speaking with our meteorologists.
Still looking into it?
Watching the radar as it happens as well. But thank you for keeping up to date, Jacqueline, with weather across the country as it happens. Fantastic to have you. But of course, let's just show a little bit of the damage that already happened. Again, this is in Barrhaven as well. As you can see, this is basically a construction site. It's sent in from Cameraman 2014. And as you can see, he was there on a job site with a customer doing some training. So he brought the customer along. Of course, this was not what they anticipated to see in the skyline. You can see the tornado just whipping around, those power lines as well, just swaying in the wind, and of course the debris everywhere in this area. So you can just see how impactful these tornadoes have been in Barrhaven. But of course, this is a house that is in, development, but we do have a story from our very own Mark Robinson. He's going to give you all the details on what to do if you live in an apartment and a tornado hits.
So what should you do if you live in an apartment building and there's a tornado headed your way? Well, the building behind me gives you a bit of a clue. Take a look at what it's made out of. Good solid concrete, steel. Remember that the biggest issue with tornadoes is not being picked up and thrown by them. It's what the tornado is actually throwing. Now, One of the issues that we have is the higher we go up in the tornado, the stronger the wind speeds, the faster the wind speeds. So if you're up on one of these upper floors, you can be getting that much stronger winds than you can at the lowest, right at the surface. So that means best thing you can do, head down as close as you can to the basement if you can't get all the way down there. Interior hallway, put as much building or as much walls, much concrete as you can between yourself and the tornado that's incoming.
Thank you so much, Mark Robinson, again. He is as well on his way to Barrhaven. We've been speaking about this. Here's a little bit of a look again. So we have here, this is from, of course, Sanguichi. Apologies for this, but she is taking some photos from Ottawa, our nation's capital, and you can just see all this cloud coverage as well. So we do have Mark Robinson. He's heading to Barrhaven. What he's doing is he is seeing the damage because right now they are really in cleanup mode. Basically, the neighbors and people will be out making sure that they're clearing up the glass from the parking lot, the roadways, because this was a suburb that was hit in south of Ottawa. So people are going to be showcasing, you know, the unity during this time, and we will be capturing it for you on the Weather Network because Jacqueline knows firsthand that when storms hit, the one good thing that comes out of them is the after effect from the community. They really do band together to put things back together, and it's beautiful to see. But Jacqueline, you have been watching the radar extremely closely and you have come up across a few different tornado warnings. I see right now you're basically looking at the Montreal region because that is in the line of fire right now.
Right, and tornado warnings are north of the city of Montreal up through Saint-Jérôme still, Blainville, those areas, as you can see there. Let me just take my radar off and then I'm going to show you kind of what's happened to the storm in Montreal. Joliet, Saint-Jérôme, those areas, Laurentide, Rawdon, Blainville, Lavaltrie. Those are the areas that we're watching for rotating storms at this point. Now, let's go back to the radar, and I'm going to take the warnings off. If we go to Montreal, the city of Montreal, a lot of people have been asking, are we in the clear? And even last time I was live here, well, I haven't stopped being live, I guess, but the last time I talked to you, I said, yeah, just about. But now the storm is kind of back built. That's a term that we use when, see how it's kind of like, it's going along, it looks like it's stopping, and then all of a sudden there's more precipitation that's kind of building from the south. It's almost like it's rebuilding a very strong updraft on the southern end of this line of storms. So, no, Montreal, you're not in the clear, and you may not be in the clear for some time still, because now, in terms of the tornadic threat, we're not seeing that at this time, but we are looking at the potential for more rain. So there must be some sort of boundary that this is interacting with, because all of a sudden it's like the storms were moving, it's hard to explain here, but the storms were moving kind of this way, and then all of a sudden we see this precipitation in the last loop kind of move due north. That says to me that there's probably some little front or some interaction that's happening where it's sort of merging and converging together in that area. Unlucky for Montreal, though, because that means more in the way of rain still before you're going to clear out, possibly some hail, although I haven't heard of any hail reports. But we'll watch it closely for any signs of rotation, but no tornado warning in that area, but a back-building storm in Montreal. So as much as it looked like you were going to be in the clear, you are not. You are looking at some heavy rain still on radar. I hope that makes sense. And then we also have a tornado warning back to the west, all the way in the prairies. Let's go there and show you. I'm just going to fly over there. Okay, this storm has picked up strength since the last time I showed it to you, for sure. Not uncommon in the prairies to see these hailstorms really develop. So, whoops, let's go back to that. I'm going to press pause. I'm going to put the warnings on there. So you can see the tornado warning issued for Steinbach included in that. But also, if we are seeing hail, and I can guarantee you that's where it's going to be, we probably have some pretty big hail. We were talking earlier about the colors. If you're still watching me, if some of the same folks are, thanks for hanging in there. But we were talking about the reds, the yellows, the greens, the blues, etc. The magenta is really maxed out on our reflectivity. So that's when we know that it's likely going to be a hailstorm. So we've got ice being reflected back to the radar. In addition to that, we also have rotation in this storm. So hard to say exactly where that is, but we're going to keep you posted. But the tornado warning is in effect for that area. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us still. We've been live for several hours now, and this is how it all started. Barrhaven, Ontario, just southwest, about 17 kilometers southwest of the city of Ottawa. That's what it looked like, with a tornado that will be officially rated. And, we'll talk about the damage, I imagine literally hours away. Mark Robinson's on his way to the area, along with the Northern Tornado Projects. That's a organization that works very closely with Environment Canada. Very good friend of mine, Dave Sills, Dr. Dave Sills. He'll be doing an assessment, or his team will, to see what rating they will give this tornado. Because Jordan, as you know, you can never look at that video, as impressive as it is, and you can never look at that and say, oh, that's an EF2 tornado, or that's an EF1. No, you can't. You don't know, because it's based on damage. A team goes out and does that after the fact, and then we'll find out those details.
Absolutely. And Jacqueline, we will have those details, of course, in the coming days for you to share on the Weather Network. But you did mention that we do have some tornado warnings as well. So I do have that information for you. So tornado warning for the rural municipality of Hanover, including Steinbach, Niverville, and Grunthal. And for the Quebec region as well, we have Rawdon and Mashute area. So that is from, again, Environment Canada. That is the latest information that we have in terms of tornado warnings. Again, that's in southern Manitoba as well as Quebec. So we have a lot going on across the country, Jacqueline, and this has been happening in the course of a couple of hours. We already had 2 tornado warnings in nation's capital, and now it continues to move east, impacting, a lot of areas. We also have some populations that are without power, 500,000 across Quebec. That has to do, again, with the fires, as well as some of the impacts from the storm. So, Jacqueline, I want to know, when you're watching the radar, what are you looking out for right now? What should the audience be aware of if they are in the line of those storms?
Well, if you're in the Montreal area, know that we've got some building storms sort of behind the main line. So you're going to be in the rain for a little while still. You're probably going to be looking at hail potentially. And we just got a new tornado warning update from Environment Canada. That includes L'Assomption, Quebec, also Joliette. And yeah, I'm gonna go to that, but I'll come back to this. I wanted to show you some hail in the prairies, but I'm gonna come back to that. I'm gonna show you some hail in Quebec too. There's the hailer and the tornado warned storm in Manitoba. Now we go for a little ride across Canada, back over to Montreal, and let's show you the latest. These tornado warnings just kind of keep moving eastward. Makes sense, because the line of storms is also moving eastward. So I'm just going to pause that. I'm going to turn off the radar, show you where those tornado warnings are. There it is. So L'Assomption, Laurentide, now added Joliette, Crabtree. If you're familiar with these areas, if you live in this area, if you're watching us from this area, thank you so much for staying with us. We hope that we're helping to keep you safe, because this storm is showing signs of rotation. That is why Environment Canada has warned this section of the storm. If you live back here, it's pretty much on its way out for you. So I wouldn't be shocked if those tornado warnings drop for those areas soon, but not for this area. We still have a little ways to go in terms of those tornado warnings. So we're watching it closely. And then back to Montreal, this, what I'm going to call kind of a stubborn storm system, sort of back building right over top of the city. And the concern with this, now that I think about it, I'm just saying this off the top of my head, but is flooding potential, because we've had a lot of heavy rain downtown Montreal, and now we have another updraft that's going to be building in behind it. If anyone has any updates on social media and can share with us, I'd love to hear if you've seen any ponding, pooling, flooding in the Dorval area or in Montreal proper, because now we have more heavy rain coming on an area that's already seen heavy rain. So that'll be interesting to see those reports. No tornadic threat in that area right now, which is good, but heavy rain, potentially some hail. in that area. And that's basically a quick look at the radar. So, you know, right now, Jordan, what I'm looking for, you asked, like I'm looking for these storms to start weakening as they move eastward. They're not yet, but I'm looking for that. I'm also watching for the rotation to ease hopefully soon, and maybe those tornado warnings dropped before they get to Trois-Rivières, maybe not. Speaking of which, Trois-Rivières looking at a severe thunderstorm warning in red. Louisville, Pierreville, Sorel, all those areas under a severe thunderstorm warning out ahead of the line of storms, which, by the way, is likely producing some pretty strong wind gusts out ahead of it. So much to talk about. My goodness, it's just never ending. And now a new tornado warning issued. Over to you, Jordan.
Absolutely, Jacqueline. And of course, we will be here to give you the most up-to-date information as it happens. You talked about wind gusts, Montreal airport reporting 98-kilometer wind gusts, but I also want to show you this video. Now, this is from Cameraman 2014. This was taken in Barrhaven, where the tornado was confirmed to have landed. As you can see here, there is a house that is being built. This construction person brought his customer to see how the house was doing. And of course, he didn't expect this kind of visitor, this tornado as well. But as you can see, there are power lines here that are waving in the strong wind gusts. And of course, with those winds, with the potential of lightning as well, you have the potential for those power lines to fall on the ground. Of course, what do you do when that happens? We'll take a look at this.
So you've been involved in an accident, or say a storm has knocked a set of power lines down onto your vehicle and we assume they're live. What do we do to stay safe? Well, the first thing we want to do is, if at all possible, back out of the area slowly and safely. But if you can't do that and you find yourself trapped, it's best to just stay put in the vehicle, call 911, and make sure no one can approach the area from around you, especially within 10 meters of the vehicle. But say something else bad is happening, like there's a fire in the vehicle. What do you do now? You got to get out of the vehicle and you don't want to die of electrocution. So we're going to make sure that everyone inside the vehicle is on the same page here. We're going to open the door all the way, get in a stable position where we can jump free and clear of the vehicle and not touch it at all with any body parts or any clothing. And then we're going to jump and land on both feet. We're going to keep our feet together and shuffle our feet away, or we can hop away from the vehicle. Now, it looks a little bit funny, but the reason we're doing this is a principle called step potential. Now, what happens there is we've got a lot of electric charge built up on the ground near the vehicle, and it kind of dissipates the further away you go. But if you take a step, we get a voltage gradient that develops, a difference in voltage, and that difference will flow right through your body. So very dangerous, of course. The other thing is you don't want to touch the vehicle due to touch potential. And touch potential occurs when we get that electricity that flows through the vehicle, through your body, and into the ground. So it's a very dangerous situation we want to avoid at all costs. Touch potential and step potential.
We currently have no tornado warnings in effect for Quebec, but take a look at this pink area. This is where the tornado warnings are in effect. Now, this means that you should take shelter immediately, but of course, it's not just Quebec that we are dealing with. We are also dealing with some warnings as well that are in southern Manitoba. So you can bring it back to me for just a second here as I list them off. So if you are in the rural municipality of Hanover, including Steinbach, Niverville, and Grunthal, as well as the rural municipality of La Brocquière, including Marchand. Now, apologies again for these pronunciations, but we do have Jacqueline Whittle. She is working really hard tracking all of these storms across Canada in southern Manitoba, as well as the eastern parts of Ontario and in southern Quebec. There is a lot of active weather for us here at the Weather Network, and that is exactly why we are in Storm Center. But Jacqueline, I want to go to southern Manitoba just for a second, if you don't mind, because we do have these tornado warnings coming into effect for these regions. So give us a little bit of a look at what the colors look like, what kind of rotation you may be seeing from the radar as well, and what can people expect who are in these areas?
Sure thing, Jordan. So if you want to just take my graphic, there's a look at the tornado warning in place for Manitoba that Jordan is referring to. So Steinbach is just right in the center of that. And I'm going to go to the radar, which is lit up with storms across Montreal. Currently, you can see very strong wind gusts likely moving ahead of, boy, this one's really intensified too. So Howick out east of Huntington. We're gonna come back to that, but I'm gonna go to that tornado warning in Manitoba. Excuse me, to just fly over here. So we have 3 storm cells, Jordan, that are tracking through southeastern Manitoba, south of the Trans-Canada. This one is the tornado warned. We've got 2 others that are far weaker, all of which are likely producing heavy rain, strong winds, and potentially some hail in there as well. I did look at our hail product and it did show that there's some hail in there, but more importantly, the potential for basically rotation in the storm. So that is basically the storm itself. It's got a very classic look to it. This particular shape, if we see, this is the storm is like this, out ahead like this. And if you imagine, the upper level winds are coming from, the jet stream winds are coming from this direction. And it's blowing, oh, it just weakened a little bit, but it's blowing the tops of the thunderstorms off. And it creates what we call an anvil. Very much like a steel anvil, if you're familiar with the look of an anvil. But this is usually where we would see mammatus clouds hanging over here, those pouch-like storms that you see pictures of. That's usually hanging under the anvil part of the storm. So a little bit of meteorology 101 there. But it does look like that storm just lost some intensity in terms of the core, which is good, but that does not mean that it's not rotating still, because the tornado warning is still in effect. But all tornado warnings are, yes, indeed done in Quebec. So that's good news, but we're still watching the situation very closely, particularly near the Sorel-Tracy area. And there are some, we're just getting some breaking news, and I kind of figured this would happen just based on the radar. Jordan, didn't I just say a few minutes ago, not to say I told you so, but didn't I say, oh gosh, this storm is back building, so we've already seen an abundance of heavy rain in the Montreal area, and now we're seeing more heavy rain. Well, we do have some road closures in Montreal due to flooding. So thank you for that update to our meteorologist, Matt Grinter, who just let me know that. Be very careful. If you're out on roadways, you could come across some road closures, some ponding, some pooling. It does not take much to hydroplane in a car when you're talking about floodwaters. Jordan?
Absolutely right. The best way to take control is to not go out on the roadways when we are dealing with severe weather like this. But of course, we've been talking about the potential for tornadoes. We know that one did hit in southern Ottawa, but we don't know exactly what the EF scale is yet, of course, because it just happened. We do have the Northern Tornadoes Project that are en route as well, so they will be evaluating it. But have you ever wondered what actually goes into evaluating a tornado? Check this out.
In order to give a tornado an EF classification, we don't actually measure the wind speeds inside the tornado. Instead, we look at the damage it caused afterwards. So that means you can't actually point to a tornado and say, that's an EF2 or an EF3. You won't know that information until afterwards. Let's take a look at an EF0 tornado. Not a lot of damage, maybe just a few roof shingles being blown off. An EF1 tornado, plenty more roof shingles being blown off, and you might even see a gutter or two coming down as well. An EF2 tornado, well, now the roof can actually lift off the home and the home can be shifted off its foundation. By the time you're at an EF3 tornado, you have problems. The exterior walls can start to tip inwards. And an EF4, well, the interior walls can start to collapse, and even those safe rooms we tell you to go to may not save your life. An EF5 tornado completely blows the home off the foundation, leaving nothing but a concrete slab.
Well, thank you, Jacqueline. You seem to have coverage for us basically in real time and in past reports as well. So thank you for the science behind the ratings for tornadoes. But of course, we do have a lot of rainfall as well with this system. It's not just the rotation of storms. It is also that thunderstorms, the heavy rain, the large hail. And I hear, Jacqueline, that you might have some, reports for us when it comes to the rainfall totals. Let us know.
So this is radar estimated, so it's not a guarantee, but we talked about the heavy rain that was falling in the core of some of those thunderstorms, Jordan, earlier. And so this is not 100%, but just to give you an idea, that we could be potentially seeing like upwards to 60 millimeters of rain just with those thunderstorms in the last hour or so, even maybe more in some of these. Let's see if I can get a better, yeah, I would say generally about 50 to 60 millimeters of rain. So you get that in a very short time span, and you can easily get some flooding in the Metro Montreal area. So you can see this loop is starting 4:15 to 5, so under an hour. So we're talking about 45 minutes to get 60 millimeters of rain. That's a lot of rain, especially when you're talking about ponding and pooling. We also talked about the potential for hail. I'm just going to see if there is any hail that's coming up on our hail. No, it doesn't look like we're really seeing much in the way of hail. I'm going to go back to the radar to show where things are at. Oh my gosh, yeah, just back, like there's a term we use when we say back building. So it's like the storm, instead of weakening, is continuing to generate updrafts. And the city of Montreal is definitely seeing these back building thunderstorm updrafts. And so as a result, like I said, possibly putting down about 50 to 60 millimeters with some of these intense storms right in the city of Montreal. And there's a lot still coming in that general direction, because look at that. We've got, well, I can tell you what's going on with this. This one here, let's pause that. Over here, making its way close to Howick, Saint-Martin, I think, Beauharnois. That area is all going to be getting hit with some very strong winds, because we're getting a lot of schooling here tonight, but this is that tight reflectivity gradient, right? Where we see that potential shelf cloud out ahead of that. So that's what's going on there. So if you live in that area, expect that you could have some strong wind gusts. Montreal, heavy rain continuing as this storm kind of seems to be stalling out and almost like a training thunderstorm. And, you know, we mentioned earlier that we were watching closely the Sorel Tracy area. Let's go up to that. Apparently there's been some damage there. There's Sorel. This was the area that was tornado warned not that long ago. There has been some damage reported. We're going to get you the latest on what that looks like, what kind of damage has occurred in that area. Right now, according to our radar, it looks like some very heavy rain. And we've got some damage video of Ottawa earlier, just on that note of damage. That's what they've been seeing. Just a ton of cleanup underway for probably weeks coming to the Ottawa area. You can see, you know, heavy rain, lots of tree shred down. But I want to go back if we could. Let's see if I can just go to that Sorel area. I'm not sure if this is going to work for me. Bear with me, viewers. Thank you for... I just want to show you the potential rotation in that area as it passed. Yes, look at it right there. Okay, so this was tornado warned not that long ago. This is at 4:40 p.m. local time. So we're talking about 20 minutes ago. Definitely seeing some rotation right there. So that Sorel Tracy area, it's possible that we had a tornado move through this area. I'm not going to say for sure, but damage has been reported in Sorel Tracy. And also another update, flooding in Blainville, just north of Montreal. Not shocked to hear that. We've got some other updates from Kareem on Twitter. Stormy, hail, nonstop lightning, heavy rains, and occasional strong wind gusts. That's in downtown Montreal. So, you know, a lot to report on. This has been a very active day across, particularly Montreal and Ottawa, two biggest cities here in, you know, eastern Ontario and in through Quebec. Very busy day, but very interested to see. One of our own meteorologists, Matt Grinter, has been really concerned about this area. Even though the tornado warnings have been dropped, when this storm moved over the Tracy and Sorel area, there was definitely rotation, and it was tornado warned at that time, by the way, so good on Environment Canada for that. But we got to really watch for some damage reports. It's possible we saw another tornado in that area. Okay, back to the radar now, and we'll give you back over to Jordan, who has been tirelessly communicating tornado watches, warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, you've been very complimentary of my work. You are doing an amazing job. Back over to you in the newsroom.
Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline. Of course, we have been keeping you up to date with our tornado warnings and watches. So currently, when it comes to tornado warnings, my apologies, we're looking at southern Manitoba. So just take a look here. We have a tornado warning for the rural municipality of Hanover, including Steinbach, Niverville, and Grunthal. We also have a tornado warning for the rural municipality of La Broquière, including Marchand. So apologies again for the pronunciations, but if you are in those areas in southern Manitoba, it is important that you take shelter immediately. Now, we've also, of course, been watching southern Quebec as well as eastern Ontario as well, because even though some of these warnings have reduced, it doesn't mean that you're not dealing with severe weather elements. So we still have the heavy rain. We still have those wind gusts. Again, Montreal Airport reporting 98-kilometer wind gusts as well, and that is currently happening, especially in time for your evening commute. So it's definitely important to keep informed, keep your alerts on as well. But we have also been listening to the viewers who have been amazing, asking their questions on our YouTube channels and keeping up to date with our information. But I did have a question from someone, Jacqueline, that I found very, very interesting, because as a storm hunter yourself, Jacqueline, you don't go necessarily too close to the storms, but you know exactly how to document them. And I'm assuming when you're out in, some of these rural areas as well, you take coverage in motel rooms, hotel rooms, sometimes just one floor in general. So some people were asking if they are currently in a hotel or a motel room, one floor, what would be a step that they should take?
I have been in that very situation, actually. It was in Joplin, Missouri, and I had just covered an EF5 tornado that had gone through. I'd been there for several days, and then all of a sudden, a tornado-warned storm was coming right over me in my hotel. So I went into the center point of the home under the concrete stairs. And that's where you want to be. You want to be in the center point of a hotel. You want to be away from those front doors, that slide where you bring your luggage in. Nowhere near that. That's the first thing to be blown out by winds. And I've seen that happen. You want to be, in the center point of the home. Most hotels, rather, are typically fairly strong structures. That goes for hurricane chasing too. You want to be in the center point of that, but no structure is really ever completely safe unless you're underground, especially when you're talking about EF5s. And we've only ever seen one EF5 tornado in Canada in Ely, Manitoba. So we don't see a lot of EF5s here in Canada. Not that we couldn't, but we don't typically. But in the Central Plains in Tornado Alley, they get a lot of EF4s and 5s. And sometimes, as you probably saw in that tornado report that I did, sometimes all that's left is just the concrete pad. If there's no basement and everything's wiped away, that's an EF5. There's really nowhere to be safe when you're dealing with a tornado that strong. But in this case, if you're in a hotel, center point of that building, not on the upper levels, you want to be on the main level. Under a concrete stairway is always a good option, and cover your head. That's a look at the lightning that's happening across the Metro Montreal area. Tons of energy still going on. And these are not weakening out, but I do have an update from one of my colleagues and meteorologist at the Weather Network, Matt Grinter, who's very, very good at what he does. And what his assessment here is likely, and I'm not holding you to this, by the way, Matt, but this potential rotation may have been happening on what we call almost like a bow echo line. So if we have a line of storms, sometimes on the ends, we can get these little spin-ups that occur, kind of like a bookend. If you think of a bookend on a stack of books, it's at the end of a line of storms, and sometimes that can create a little bit of rotation. So that may have been what's happened in Sorel and Tracy, that area where we were watching, because remember we said there was potential damage in that area. So it may not have been like a bona fide tornado per se, Jordan, but we could be seeing some damage, some strong wind gusts. And that's kind of the latest. So thank you for that, Matt. The other thing I'm really quite concerned about, and I'm sure many meteorologists that are watching this event are concerned about, is flooding for Montreal, because this is now just, again, back building, continuing to build new updrafts in this area. Like normally you would start to see this move off to the east and it would weaken out. But watch the loop. It just keeps building more and more strong updrafts and more strong storms that keep training over the same area. Well, there's already been flooding reports in downtown Montreal, so we got to watch this story that could be unfolding in Metro Montreal. And we'd love your updates. If you have any, please share them with us on social media, and we'll get that out to the public. The other thing here, classic line of storms right here. See how tight that reflectivity gradient is? I know I sound like a broken record, but that is strong winds coming for those areas like Hemmingford, Howick. Let's just play the latest. Yeah, and these also seem to be kind of stalling out. I don't know why. All of a sudden, everything just seems to be kind of very stationary. This is almost taking on this bow echo shape that we were just seeing in up near Tracy and Sorel. Do you see how it's kind of got like a little curly end, like on the edge of the line of storms? It's possible. We got to just be careful that there could be rotation in that area. Not saying there is, just something to watch. So now what looks to be unfolding, Jordan, is not only do we have this line of storms that's affecting Montreal, but now we have, so we've got this, we've also now got this next batch of heavy rain and strong winds headed for downtown Montreal. They can't seem to get a break in the city right now. Jordan?
It seems like it's back to back for these regions. Of course, they were in a tornado warning. Now they have been, reduced to a tornado watch. But there is another system, as you mentioned. But I'm assuming that there is less, fuel with this system, so it won't be as dangerous for these regions. But of course, we still have tornado watches for these areas in all of the orange here, and we are tracking the system that is making its way east, impacting these regions as we head into the afternoon and the evening commute as well. But when I look at all these colors, when I look at all these different ingredients, I wonder, Jacqueline, what exactly do you need to make a band of storms like this? Because over the couple of hours that we have been live streaming, I love to know the science behind, what is the perfect recipe for such a storm like the one that we have been reporting on all day today?
Well, yeah, what it is it's a collection of many different thunderstorms. And so what you need is a very potent area of low pressure that comes with varying wind directions as you go up in the atmosphere. You also need an abundance of moisture. You need an abundance of heat. And that destabilizes the atmosphere, Jordan. And I think what you're getting past is a tornado warning right now, if I'm correct. So, because I've got it up on my screen. So, Emmanuel, if you want to take my screen full, go ahead and read that off, if you would, Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely. So we already have tornado warnings in effect for the La Broquiere, including Marchand area, but there has been a tornado warning that has ended. Now, this ending is for the rural municipality of Hanover, including Steinbach, Niverville, and Grunthal. So I'm assuming that that's being reflected to you as you see it.
Yeah, the one we're looking at here is this new tornado warning. Just, it says here, Doppler radar indicates, pardon me, a possible tornado over Lake St. Pierre. So that if you live in that area, there could be a possible tornado in the area. This just issued just minutes ago. Louisville, Trois-Rivières, tornado warning. That replaces the severe thunderstorm warning. Excuse me, Jordan, if you already said that, okay. I apologize if I'm just sort of catching up. Twitter questions. Lots of people saying they're getting maritime tornado warnings near Montreal at 5:08 and asking what that is. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that. I apologize. What I can tell you is that we have this tornado warning in place right now for Louisville, Trois-Rivières, Mauricie, I believe, and I guess right along the St. Lawrence. That's where we're seeing this, still that rotation. Let's go to the velocity data and see what kind of rotation we are seeing right now. No, we've got to go a little bit further east. Bear with me, folks. I'm going to show you what this looks like in real time. If we can, let's see if my radar goes that far. Yes. Okay. No, it doesn't. Yeah, barely. Okay. So there's a little bit, you can see, pick up on a few pixels over here. Possible rotation. is for the, oh, okay. So to answer that question, that specific tornado warning is for the lake in that area. That's why you're getting maritime tornado warnings near Montreal. Okay, thank you, Mac Grinter, for clearing that up. So it could be some rotation here because they were mentioning that there could be potential rotation over the water. So I think that's what we're talking about there. But anyway, back on the radar, we have the tornado warning in place. The other thing we have going on, oh my gosh, there's so much to go on to talk about here. Don't even know where to, let's go back to Montreal. That is really just seeing now what I would deem a training line of thunderstorms with another line coming at you. So strong winds about to hit Montreal again. Potentially, if you get a view of it after a clearing, you might get a view of another shelf cloud in Montreal, but some damaging winds are possible with this next storm. But we're still looking at a core like this that is dropping a lot in the way of heavy rainfall. Now, if I can go to the radar, let's see if I can, okay, I'm gonna get rid of that. I would like to actually see precipitation. There we go. So this is in the last, let's see, when does this start? 4:30 and we are 5:20. So the last 40 minutes, we have seen upwards to 70 now millimeters of rainfall, maybe even more for Metro Montreal and continuing. Now, if this next storm moves in, we could easily tack on another 50 millimeters of rainfall if that happens. So the flooding potential is really what I'm watching for in Metro Montreal right now, which I didn't really even see coming, to be very honest. I wish I could say that I nailed that one, but I didn't, because, you know, I just assumed that at this point these storms would be pretty well past the downtown core, but no, we've got now another batch of storms, Jordan, coming to Metro Montreal with strong winds and heavy rain. I can't help but think that that the flooding is definitely going to be an issue. We also have another tornado warning reissued for that same Steinbach area in Manitoba, FYI.
Absolutely, you're right. We've been seeing some flooding pictures already coming in through Twitter, showing us the flooding that has happened in Montreal as well. But for those in southern Manitoba, it's important to know these things if you are out on the roads. Now, it's important that if you are driving and a tornado happens to hit, it's important to go to the nearest solid shelter that you can find. Of course, drive at a 90-degree angle and find lower level if no shelter is nearby. But we also learned from Michael as well, Michael Van, that if you are in a car, make sure to put a seatbelt on, lower your head, and cover it with your hands. But of course, we have already been talking about this flooding concern in Montreal, and with that also comes trickery when you are traveling home. So we're going to listen to a report now about hydroplaning.
We know the drill. If it's snowing, don't be this person. Slow down, and if it's bad enough, don't even try to drive in it. Rain is a different story. We don't necessarily have rain days that cancel school, and unless there's a flood, we typically drive in rain, no question. But rain poses a very real risk to drivers. This is the story of hydroplaning. It happens when a layer of water builds up between the wheels of a vehicle and the surface of the road. As a result, the vehicle loses traction, and if it happens to all wheels at once, you essentially skate across the water. Now, don't panic. The grooves of rubber tires are designed to dispense water from beneath in rainy weather, but when there's just too much water for the tires to dissipate, well, that's when we hydroplane. So what can we do to prevent it? Keep your tires tuned. High-quality tires, they will help too. Avoid puddles in standing water if it's safe to do so, and of course, stay calm. Reduce your speed. Hydroplaning can happen in a second. So be cautious and remember that no matter how hard we try, we are at the mercy of weather.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Very informative for us, especially for those in the Montreal region. As we mentioned, we're dealing with flooding potential there. We already have seen the pictures flooding through to us as well. And we are dealing, of course, with some tornado warnings in the prairies. So in southern Manitoba, we are looking at tornado warnings for the rural municipality of La Brocquière, including Marchand. Now with this, you can see the potential of severe thunderstorms as well, possible of creating a tornado, as well as some golf-sized hail with this system. So making a lot of trickery travel for commuters. We would definitely recommend to not be out on the roads until the tornado warning has dissipated. But Jacqueline, you have been doing such a great job tracking these storms as they are happening. And Montreal is something that we've been discussing because even though they're not in a tornado warning now, they are still dealing with, that back end storm that you've been discussing that is building into the region. So how's it shaping up right now?
If it's okay, I'm just going to hit on this tornado warning, and then I will give you an update on that, Jordan, because yes, it is. It's back building, and there's a flooding potential and so much going on in Montreal. But I want to go to this tornado warning because we've got basically this particular storm cell that is moving southeast at 20 kilometers an hour. Jordan had mentioned the areas that are included in the tornado warning here in Manitoba. But we're looking at golf ball sized hail and 90 kilometer an hour wind gusts with this particular storm cell. So a dangerous storm for sure, headed to probably just skimming by Woodridge. Tornado, severe thunderstorm moving at about 12 kilometers in an east direction, east of Sarto, if you know that area, if you live in this area. So that's part A on our radar. The other situation here is over in Montreal. We do have a tornado warning still in effect for areas near Trois-Rivières, Saint-Narcisse, Champlain. That's because there has been potential rotation seen over the lake in that area, as I understand. And then just a mess, a very strong line of storms right through the Montreal area. There's a look at this, and I say mess because it's literally one updraft after another. It is very stormy. There's a ton of lightning. Those are the lightning strikes that are associated to the storms. There is a lot in the way of damaging wind gusts with this. These are strong storms. If we were to take a look at the strength of it, we measure the radar, measure the rainfall, the precipitation in dBZs. So very strong storms. That's an indication of some very strong returns. We've also talked a lot about the flooding potential with this, and heavy rain is about to hit Montreal for, well, I don't know how many times now. It's just been several storms in a row that have been sort of training over Metro Montreal. I'll just zoom in for you and get right into the city here. So knowing that this might be just a little bit behind because the radar might be ahead of this, so you might actually be in a bit of a clearing right downtown, but don't get too used to that because this major storm here is just about to move into Montreal again. Laval, Terrebonne, the same areas that we've been talking about for some time. And very strong wind gusts are possible with this as well. So lots to get into. We have seen a couple photos on Twitter of some downtown flooding in Montreal. If anyone has any updates, I'd love to hear from you. But yeah, strong wind gusts. Of course, Jordan, still on the way for Metro Montreal. Other than that, tornado warning in place still for this area here. This is the only one we have right now, Louisville over to Trois-Rivières in Quebec. And then, of course, we have the ongoing situation in Manitoba with, okay, so we've got here another update. McTavish Station, so this is a weather station in downtown Montreal, has indeed received 58 millimeters of rainfall, and they've got the other line coming through. So I had mentioned that let's go back to the radar, that it's possible we see already what you've seen. Like if you've seen 50, almost 60 millimeters of rainfall, it's possible that you could see it again because you've got another line of storms that's coming your way. So let's go to the radar. This is 3-hour accumulated rainfall. I'm just gonna, yeah, so about, actually, I think it's less than that. I think that title might be wrong. I think that the loop is actually only showing 1 hour accumulated rainfall because that's when the timestamp starts. So if I pause this, there we go. I mean, this is radar estimated, but we know that a weather station just verified 58 millimeters of rainfall. So a lot of rainfall for Metro Montreal and more rainfall. All this rainfall back here is all moving toward Metro Montreal next. So could we double that? It's possible. We're going to watch this very closely. Jordan, I'll send it back into the studio, into the newsroom with you.
Rainfall. We actually do have some visuals, Jacqueline, that we can show you now. So our media producer, Emmanuel, is going to bring them up for us. So this is some rainfall that we have happening right now in Montreal, Quebec. You can just see just the amounts that are coming down from the sky. Of course, this means that there are road closures in effect as well, because you're going to have potentially that ponding and that pooling on the roadways as well. So trickery travel for those commuting home for their evening commute. Now, of course, we've also been seeing some damage in southern Ottawa as well. So take a look at this. This is a video that was sent in from one of our viewers, Cameraman 2014. This is in Barrhaven. Now, this is where a tornado was confirmed to have touched down, and this was actually on a job site. So he was there with a customer doing some training, and then they had an unwanted visitor, which is this tornado. Now you can just see the power, all the debris just floating in the air as well. But I want to take a look at some more damage that has been reported. So take a look at this. This is in Ottawa. Of course, this happened today as well. You can just see all these trees torn out from their limbs on the ground as well. We also have reports of rooftops. We've seen pictures, we've seen videos of rooftops completely off of homes, a lot of the times in suburbs as well, because this, of course, it was in Barrhaven. Now, I know we also see a lot of people on the ground because they're really dealing with now more of the cleanup aspect of this storm. So the community is already coming together to clean up their neighborhood for a better tomorrow. But of course, we've been talking about rain in Montreal, and you said, I believe, Jacqueline, that 58 millimeters was confirmed. I'm wondering, how do you quantify that for someone? How much rainfall does that look like?
Oh, okay. Well, some people could get that maybe even in a month, you know, like it just really depends on where you live. But yeah, you're looking at quite a bit in the way of, you know, measurable rainfall. So enough to cause flooding, enough to cause hydroplaning. And we've got another batch, Jordan, on the way, because we can see the second line of, probably like third or fourth line of storms, realistically. Montreal's just been getting hammered with storms, one after another. But now the next one is on its way here from, you can see Dorval's seen some heavy rain. And now we've got the leading edge of the storm just entering the downtown core. Once again, probably the potential of seeing a shelf cloud. You know, and there's a lot of heavy rain back in this core of the with this core of the thunderstorm. But we've already seen such heavy rain. The good news is that this particular storm that was bringing the rain to Montreal is now out of the way. So that's good news. But now the second line. Here's some more good news. Once this one passes Montreal, well, maybe I won't speak so soon this time, because the thing is that this is how this radar looked an hour ago when the storms were initially moving through Montreal. And I even said on air, I said, okay, well, this is probably going to be coming to an end. But then what ended up happening was it started to back build, and it just kept building new updrafts and training over the same area. I hope that this does not happen with this particular line. In other words, we want this to move past like this. We want the direction of the storm to move eastward. If it moves directly north, we're going to be in for a lot of heavy rain. All this heavy rain will be moving over the city of Montreal. So we're going to watch the radar very closely. Can't thank everyone enough for staying with us all afternoon. If you've been tuning in and out on YouTube, or if you're watching us on our app, really, really appreciate you staying with us and trusting us to keep you safe. It's been a very active day. Let's show you how it all started hours ago, just outside of Ottawa. Emmanuel, if we could show that visual of such an impressive tornado. This is the type of tornado that you would see like, you know, in Tornado Alley, where it's lofting debris. Do you see those little black specks? That's actually pieces of the home it's hitting. It may be vehicles, whatever it's interacting with. It's lofting the debris well up into the sky, and it takes a very powerful tornado to do that. Now, I know that tornado in some of these shots doesn't even really look like a, like, quote, proper tornado, right? It's kind of like, where is it? You see debris. That looks more like what we're used to. That's kind of what we call the roping out phase. Usually it ends, that's when it dissipates. That looks maybe a bit more traditional, but I guess the point is that each tornado, every tornado, and I've tracked a lot of them over the last 13 years as a chaser, each one looks different. Each one does something different. It doesn't always need to have that proper condensation cloud right down to the ground. Sometimes it's missing part of it, but it's still swirling and in contact with the ground. You just may not see it connected. So anyway, that's how the day started. We saw 2 tornado warnings for the city of Ottawa, and then basically this line has just kept chugging away eastward, but slowly. Would you not agree, Jordan? It seems like once these storms got to Montreal, everything seems to just be kind of stalling out. It's almost like everything's taking a little longer to get past the city of Montreal.
A little bit longer, and of course you said that there was a little bit of a break, but it's so short-lived as well, because as you mentioned, there is that building of another system impacting the regions like Montreal that are already dealing with 58 millimeters of rainfall so far, and of course pooling, ponding, and flooding on the roadways. But we have been discussing, of course, the tornado watches and warnings that have come into effect over the course of the last 3 or 4 hours that we have been live streaming here on the Weather Network. But of course, we still have that risk for those thunderstorms as well as we head into the afternoon and the evening hours. And of course, large hail and damaging wind gusts. But of course, when we talk about thunderstorms, we also have the potential for those lightning strikes. So what are the chances that you get struck by lightning, and what do you do in the aftermath? Take a look.
About 3/4 of people will survive, but lightning never leaves a person unharmed.
Lightning is the most dangerous aspect of thunderstorms, and being struck means bad news. But what exactly happens to your body if you're struck?
Turns out when lightning hits the ground, and this is relevant to injuries, it isn't absorbed. The electricity isn't just magically absorbed by the ground. In fact, when it hits, it's a lot like spilling a glass of water on the ground. It will hit and then spread out. Why that's relevant is that people who are standing near where lightning strikes happen can actually be struck by lightning. And there's a phenomenon called step current that can occur, where if you have one foot closer to a lightning strike than the other one, the lightning can actually preferentially travel up one leg, through the pelvis, and then down the other leg before exiting the body.
The current can have some really bad effects on your body.
So people routinely will develop cataracts if they're hit around the head. They will lose hearing, which is both a phenomenon from when the plasma channel collapses and creates thunder, which is an explosive sound up close, as well as electrically conducting into the ear itself. People will develop permanent nerve damage of some kind or another. In fact, almost uniformly, people who are struck by lightning will develop chronic tingling or pain along the nerve fibers that were involved. There's a significant number of people who will develop some permanent neurologic damage that can include traumatic brain injury from lightning strikes.
Jason said the heart is also at risk of resetting if struck by lightning. So if someone is hit, it's crucial for them to receive high-quality chest compressions.
In patients who are struck by lightning, it is so absolutely important that they receive high-quality chest compressions to try and resume the heart. And incredibly, that usually will work really well.
In most circumstances, lightning will leave people permanently scarred, so it's best to avoid it altogether and heed any warnings. Like we always say, when thunder roars, go indoors.
Okay, so we have a couple questions coming in from our listeners here. Someone asked what they can expect with the second wave, and it's mostly going to be strong wind gusts as well as heavy rain. We also had a member, I believe his name was Kevin, he lives in PEI. He was asking if he should get geared up for this storm, but we do not see that as a potential. So Kevin, you should be absolutely fine in PEI. So again, we do have tornado warning for Troy Riviera area, so that is in Quebec. That is the most up-to-date information from Environment Canada, Jacqueline. So you've been looking at basically the entire country. You've been looking at southern Manitoba, but right now you've also been focusing on Montreal as well as just basically everything around that region. So what's happening right now for viewers?
Right now, Jordan, we've got the core of the next line of storms right over Montreal. So probably dealing with some very strong wind gusts and some very heavy rain anywhere in this darker red shade. You can guarantee that you're seeing some heavy rain. You can also tell, and it's they're almost kind of connected to this storm now, so you probably don't have a very good view of any sort of shelf cloud, but there's likely some strong wind gusts in here as well. And this is what happens. It's very typical at the end of kind of a thunderstorm event where all the storms sort of line out and they become a very strong line of storms that are marching in one direction. That's what's happening with this line, except that Montreal's already had several strong thunderstorms, some of which have been tornado warned today. So we don't need any more rain, and we are seeing some very heavy rain in this particular radar loop. And if I go back to, let's see here, I think this should work. I'm going to go back to the precipitation. Yeah, look at this. This is crazy. This is now potentially picking up on 82 millimeters of rain in the last hour in parts of Metro Montreal. Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. So 82, 64, 76. These are some impressive numbers. And only that's going to increase. I wouldn't be shocked if they end up with over 100 millimeters of rain because we're just seeing that second core. In fact, we just got an update. So there you go. You can see, let's go pixel, this is called pixel querying, where we're questioning, there we go, over 80 millimeters, 84 millimeters of rain now, potentially. So very impressive rainfall amounts in a very short period of time, right in the Metro Montreal area. I got to think that there's got to be some flooding. If I zoom right into the city and do that, you know, okay, so 86, that's the highest one I've seen yet. 84, 86 millimeters of rainfall falling in the city of Montreal in less than an hour. So if anyone has any updates on flooding potential, like what you've seen, I would really be interested in seeing that. We'll come back to that and give you an update. But I'd love to hear, you know, what you're seeing out there. It's a very strong line of storms that's still working its way through the Montreal area. Look at that. Look at the, wow, that's a very strong storm. Even though it's not showing any signs of rotation, and that's good news, a lot of wind. Don't think there's much in the way of hail. I haven't seen much in the way of hail, but certainly some heavy rain. So flooding becomes the main concern for that area. Just to kind of recap, this was the thought as far as our forecast today. This is where we were thinking the most intense storms were. We issued this early morning. Kudos to our team of forecasters here at the Weather Network, really nailing the high risk area for Montreal. Severe, likely, Trois-Rivières, Cornwall, back to the west in Ottawa, who saw two, not one, two tornado warnings in the city of Ottawa. We still have one tornado warning left right now at this point. Pointe-du-Lac, Trois-Rivières, Saint-Narcisse, Champlain, all those areas looking at the potential of a rotating storm. Okay, we've got some flooding photos I think may be coming through soon. So I'm going to try and share that with you in the city of Montreal. I'm not shocked with over 86 millimeters of rainfall and counting in that area. But this is how the day started, folks. We saw a tornado. We don't know the rating yet because Environment Canada hasn't been out to do that assessment, and they will be, I'm sure, first thing tomorrow morning. But we started the day off with visuals like this in Ottawa. Check it out. That is a debris field being lofted into the air. I mean, just incredible, just incredible. There's another look, another view. We had plenty videos that came through to the Weather Network. Always want to remind people, as much as we love getting your videos, please make sure you're safe to do so. If it's time for you to be taking shelter, it's best that you forego the video. For us, we will understand. We want you to take shelter. But that is basically some of the damage there. You can see some photos of the aftermath. Our own Mark Robinson is on his way to Barrhaven, which is about 17 kilometers southwest of Ottawa, and he'll be probably talking to some folks that went through this event, maybe helping with some cleanup. Wouldn't be the first time that Mark has helped with some cleanup. I've done it with him as well, and seeing if he can help in any way and helping to tell your story, because that's what our job is to do. It's to help you ahead of these events and help tell your stories after the event. Maybe that can bring some awareness and attention, maybe get some support for you in any way we can. Thank you for staying with us on this live stream throughout the afternoon. I'm going to send it back into the newsroom. Jordan, what's the latest that you have there?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Of course, we still have a tornado warning in effect for Troy Riviera area, which you mentioned. Of course, in southern Manitoba, the rural municipality of La Broquière, including Marchand. So again, thank you so much for being patient with us when it comes to our pronunciations. But of course, we still have watches in effect with the back end of that system. As you mentioned, the biggest risk factors are the strong wind gusts, 98 kilometers an hour reported at the Montreal airport. And we also have that heavy rain that we are seeing. You mentioned that it's just digging its heels into this area. We maybe anticipated it to move east a little bit quicker, but it is staying and stabilizing so far. But we have been getting some really interesting questions from our audience members via our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for sending in your questions. And Jacqueline Whittle, of course, we've mentioned, she is a storm chaser. She has been on the ground for events like this, and there's been a lot of places that you've been. We've mentioned motel rooms. You've also stayed in cars, of course, not in the brunt of the system, but on the outer edge, making sure that you're safe as well. But some people have been asking questions about transport. So if they're in a bigger city, for example, like Ottawa or Montreal, and they're on a subway system or they're on a bus, what would be the best course of action if they come across a tornado warning and they can't get off?
That's a tough one. That's a really tough one to, I don't even know if I feel comfortable answering that, because I think the best thing is to not get on the transit system
there you go.
Initially. If you've got severe weather system, it's probably best just to avoid travel at that time. But if you are in that situation, I mean, the best thing to do, I guess, would probably be to hunker down. Maybe if there's any way of sort of piling up as a group in the center of the train car, away from the windows, covering your head. But boy, I don't know if I feel like an expert to give that kind of advice. But I've never been in that situation, but
that's good.
That would be an awful situation to be in for sure. But Jordan, I also want to just show you, because we just got some videos, some breaking news here, some storm damage in Sorel, Quebec. Let's show you this. Storm damage. Look at the tree that was completely uprooted on this street. We've got debris lofted at that apartment building. We've got shingles down, lots of tree damage down. So this was that area that we were talking about earlier today, that we said, well, maybe it wasn't a bona fide tornado, but maybe just some strong winds on the edge of what we call a bow echo. I don't know if this is making sense to everybody, but it makes sense to us meteorologists. But we had a line of storms, and sometimes on the end of those lines, you can get a brief spin up. Well, a brief spin up was enough to do this. This is Sorel, Quebec, just in the last, I would say, hour or so. So much to talk about. Thank you very much to my team for getting that video in so quickly. I also want to go to the radar to talk about the latest watches and warnings. It looks to me, unless my system is lagging behind, that the tornado warning maybe has been lifted in Manitoba. Maybe if my team could confirm that. Looks to me like, oh, no, I'm wrong. There it is. Sorry, my bad. There it is, still in effect for that same regional municipality that that Jordan was talking about. I apologize for that. So yes, that is still in effect. I'm trying to find Marchand, Gardenton, Sundown, I believe is the area. And also, okay, so let's now transition back over to Montreal, because we've been monitoring very closely what the radar estimated rainfall has been, and it's been impressive to say the least. The last time we looked, Jordan, you might recall that we saw as much as 86 millimeters of rainfall potentially in parts of the city. Let's see if any of that has changed right in the downtown core. This is just a guesstimate, 82, 76, looks like it's maybe topped out at that, 80 mark. So that's good news. Okay, so it looks like, yeah, about 80 millimeters, not that that's good news, but 80 millimeters of rainfall likely has fallen in that region since this line of storms has moved through. And the good news is that the heaviest rain should be past Montreal pretty soon. I'm just gonna take that off. There. Yeah, it's almost past Montreal, so I wouldn't be shocked if we still will tally up those rain amounts a little bit more. But this is still moving through the city of Montreal. As you can still see, severe thunderstorm warning in place. And is that tornado warning still in place for Trois-Rivières? It looks like it is, I think. Yes, it is. It looks like it's still in place up there. Champlain, Trois-Rivières, Saint-Narcisse. We will keep you posted on that. We also have another video, if you could just bear with me, and then I'm going to send it back to you, Jordan. We've got another Montreal flood video here to share with you. Check it out. Okay, so that's a photo in Montreal. That's a lot of ponding and pooling out on the roadway there. I apologize, I didn't mean to click to that. Let's go back. So there's a city bus, a lot of ponding and pooling. Of course, we talked about the other situation unfolding in Sorel near Tracy with potentially some wind damage, maybe a tornado, maybe just a spin up, not like a bona fide tornado, but maybe a wind gust that did this, some straight line winds. But look at that, that tree actually knocked right out of the grass. Very impressive. That's from Joey Olivier. Thank you very much for those videos, and thank you to my team for getting those on air so quickly. Jordan, I'll send it back into the newsroom with you, and I'll be back with much more.
Yeah, of course. I want to show you some more footage, Jacqueline, as well, because it is flooding in. So this is north of Montreal in Mirabel, and this is sent in from someone named Patrick. Now, take a look at this. We are showcasing some of the storm as it has unfolded. So make sure that you stay tuned for this. I'll send it to Patrick for his footage.
We are here in the city of Mirabel, just north of Montreal, where the Environment Canada observers said they saw a tornado. I did not, and I went around, did not see any damages, but that doesn't mean there was no tornado. It just means that I didn't see any damages. We also have a report north of Montreal of hail about the size of a 1 centimeter that touched the region of Saint-Colomban and Bellefeuille. There was a lot of alerts, tornado alerts, that were issued by Environment Canada for all of southern Quebec throughout the afternoon. It's not over yet. I mean, actually, it is possible to see more cell developing behind the big line of thunderstorm we saw. And it's possible until the sun sets.
Thank you so much, Patrick from We really appreciate your look lives as they are happening. Thank you so much. For those who are out, of course, we do have our Mark Robinson as well. He is making his way to Barrhaven, of course. Maybe you have a little bit of footage of that, Emmanuel, as well. If we can just pull that up, we might as well give you a visual of what we have been forecasting all day today. We have been, broadcasting this live stream and live on our broadcast. But take a look at this, okay? So this is in southern Ottawa, of course. You can kind of hear people just enamored with what they are seeing. And of course, in the sky there, it kind of looks like birds, but it's actually debris. Now that's shingles being ripped off of these homes in this suburb. And of course, we also saw some photos as well of windows being shattered, glass on the ground. In Montreal, they are dealing with a second band, a system that is bringing with it heavy rainfall as well as powerful winds. And you can just see all this rain and these gray skies. Of course, we are dealing with flooding in those areas as well. But as you can see, this community here in Ottawa has dealt with some damage to their neighborhood, and right now they are in clean-up mode. So they're working hard to drive traffic away and to try and clear up their neighborhood. And of course, that's what happens during storms like this, the aftermath. It's really what makes us happy to report on the Weather Network when people are unified in building their community back up. And Jacqueline, you've seen it firsthand. You've been out reporting as a storm chaser on weather events just like this one. So what is the latest information that is standing out to you when it comes to our radar?
Well, you know, basically, I think the tornadic threat is likely going to be winding down soon. We've seen a lot less. I'm speaking of Quebec, by the way. We're seeing these storms line out. So, you know, basically that means that we're seeing more of a straight line wind event or a strong wind gust type of setup with heavy downpours. Rather than rotating individual storm cells. So you can see we do still have this last tornado warning. I say last, it may not be the last, but right now it's the last one for Trois-Rivières, I hope I'm saying that right, Champlain, Mauricie, and St. Narcisse. So that is still in effect. But if I show you the radar, there's the storm right over top of that. So it's just about to move eastward, but still seeing some signs of rotation. You know, so that's why that tornado warning is still in effect. We're also seeing, this has been kind of, I think what's stolen the show here is this heavy rain in Montreal that just has been parked over this metro city, you know, right downtown. It's just about past you now, but thank goodness you can find, well, sort of. I mean, again, this is what happened last time. It looked like it was going to be passed, and then it just kept kind of stalling and back building. So let's hope this starts to move out of the way. With a latest look at the potential, let's see here, the potential heavy rain that we've seen. I'm just going to see if this changed at all. I bet it has. If we just look here, okay, well, no, we're still 84, 82, 88. So we're almost at 90 millimeters of rainfall in and around the city of Montreal. There we go. So it has increased. That's quite impressive when you figure that's only been, you know, about an hour. There's a 90. So again, this is not official, but this is radar estimated rainfall, 90 millimeters of rainfall. So yeah, we'll continue to keep you posted on that. Let's see here. I'm going to go back to the radar and almost past the city of Montreal, but still hanging on. It's just like the storm that doesn't want to pass this evening, it would seem. Jordan, what do we have going on in terms of the updates? Do we still have that tornado warning for Trois-Rivières? I believe we do.
Jacqueline, you read my mind. So we do still have that tornado warning in effect, but we also have a new one that has just came in 5:53, according to Environment Canada. So Sainte-Anne-de-la-Parade area, as well as Trois-Rivières area. So those two in Quebec, tornado warnings are still in effect. So what does that mean? It means take shelter immediately, head to the lowest ground possible. So that's a basement or perhaps the lowest level of your home. Make sure as well to bring your phone with you so that you can stay updated with any alerts. And if you happen to have a mattress or a sleeping bag nearby, it's great to put that on for coverage. But of course, number one, take shelter immediately and stay away from windows as well, because this is a very powerful storm. It is a tornado warning, and we do want to take that very seriously as well. So those are the areas that have been impacted. Jacqueline, you have been watching them in real time. You've done so well with oftentimes seeing them come in before, you know, we even have the paperwork to clarify that. So you're super talented. But of course, we do have some footage as well, Jacqueline, because we are talking about warnings, but we have had a tornado already touch down in Barrhaven. So let's just take a quick look at some of the footage that has been collected and sent in to us from our viewers. Thank you so much as well for all of your help. Of course, this was earlier today in Barrhaven. As I mentioned, Mark Robinson is on his way there to do some reporting on the ground. And of course, we see the debris just flying around, those powerful winds really helping to push the debris. But of course, this is a suburb, so I'm assuming there are families living here, so it's good to take cover. This is actually at a construction site, and the person was coming here with his customer or her customer, and they actually saw this unwanted visitor in the background. The tornado just taking effect. You can see the power lines as well swaying. So hopefully no damage to that building as it is in development. But of course, we have trees that have just been ripped from the seams. We've also seen reports of roofs completely been teared off, the shingles that is, from rooftops. But of course, Jacqueline, we've said this time and time again, it's really the people who are cleaning up that make the difference. Of course, with that second system in Montreal, heavy rainfall, strong winds is what they are dealing with. And you've mentioned that there is some big rainfall totals as well that have been confirmed.
Yes, and before I forget to thank you, you did a fantastic job today, Jordan, keeping everybody informed with all of the alerts. So thanks for sending the love my way. Right back to you. Let's just show you, to just continue to recap, maybe we can take this graphic. So of course we talked about that tornado in Barrhaven, but let's not forget about the almost maybe 90 millimeters, potentially more, that fell in the city of Montreal throughout today with these training thunderstorms, very slow moving. And then we had another area of rotation near Sorel, Quebec. And we don't know if it was a proper tornado, if it was maybe a straight line wind gust, but look at the damage that occurred there. We also had a shelf cloud that moved in through the city of Montreal. That's where those storms line out, and you get kind of that hail glow and the precipitation back in the core of the storm. I mean, it's really been one thing after another all day, and Jordan and I have been honored to be with you most of the afternoon, and we appreciate everybody that stayed tuned to the Weather Network, your go-to to keep you and your family safe. And we know that whether you're watching us on YouTube or on our app, can't thank you enough. Please remain safe and stay up to date with our smartphone app in your hand at all times, because although the radar is starting to kind of wind down, which is good news, we still will be seeing heavy rain and possibly the odd, tornado warning that still could continue. Jordan, within this area, there's still a lot of strong storms moving through the Montreal metro area with the potential for more in the way of flooding. But as we start to lose daylight, we will start to see most of these storms start to dwindle, but that might be another hour or two still as they move toward Quebec City. We're going to be with you every step of the way, and you can always count on us on our TV platform at any time. If there's a tornado warning, we're going to be the ones bringing it to you. But Jordan, thank you so much. I've enjoyed our time we've spent together, many hours tracking storms. And I guess we'll end our stream now. And thank you again for everybody tuning in on this very active Thursday afternoon across Ontario, Manitoba, and Quebec.